श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So today we're continuing on with our discussion of Sri Vacana Bhusanam by Pillai Lokacharya with the commentary of Manavala Mahamunigal. So last time we ended at Sutra 294, so we're going to pick it up with Sutra 295. Previously we had been speaking about a path of spiritual unfoldment, and there were 4 stages in that spiritual unfoldment. We're not going to go back into that again, but now we're talking about 4 attributes of the prapana, the person who is the refugee or surrendered to the Supreme Lord. And just as a recap, basically, this whole section is talking about the process, the process of attaining the goal, which is eternal service to the Lord in Sri Vaikuntham, or eternal Kainkarya, and to the Lord. And the method is, of course, steadying the mind and controlling the mind, by which the senses can also be controlled, which leads us to find an acharya, to find a guru, a proper preceptor. And there might be more than one preceptor, but there's going to be one preceptor that teaches more, and then through the preceptor one does Sharanagati to the Lord, through the preceptor who is a representative of Mahalakshmi, who's the mediatrix between. She's the mediator between the souls and God, and he's a representative of her. And we surrender, and then that's through that property to the Lord, we are saved. And the agency for doing that is the initial means of doing that is through getting initiated into the Astakshara mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. And then after some time, the actual primary means is the Lord himself. And so the Lord himself is the way that we ultimately, he is the means himself, and he is also the goal. So the 4 attributes of the prapana. So here in text 295, it says there are 4 stages. The prapana, like these 4 stages that we just talked about, 4 stages of spiritual unfoldment in the previous section. The prapana also has 4 attributes. Okay, so these attributes are named in 296: knowledge, ignorance, capacity, and incapacity. This indeed is true also of the Lord. 297, 298. His knowledge is of the merit of the jiva. So the Lord's knowledge is of the merit of the jiva. His ignorance is of the demerit of the jiva. His capacity is to protect the jiva, and his incapacity is the inability to abandon it. That is the jiva. Okay. So the point being made here is, who in most systems in Hinduism or in Vaishnavism, in Sanatana Dharma, different parts of Sanatana Dharma, the actual person has to be qualified in some way. We know that in the system of property, the prapana, or the refugee, doesn't actually have to be qualified. He doesn't have to have all these qualifications, because it's not through his own efforts, his own self-efforts, that he's making advancement or he's attaining the goal. So it is the Lord himself who becomes the upaya, who is the means. The Lord takes it upon himself to be the person to put in all the efforts to save the living being that's here in samsara, who's in ignorance. So when we talk about the qualities, we're talking about his qualities. So what are his qualities? His qualities are, first of all, knowledge, that he sees the merit of the jiva. So whatever we do that's good in his service, to follow the scriptures, or you know, in that sense, right, towards anything that we do good, right, he sees that, he accepts that. His ignorance, or what he doesn't know, of course he knows everything, but the point is he neglects to take into consideration the things that we do bad, the sins that we commit. His capacity is to protect the jiva. So his number one thought is how to find an excuse to save that jiva, to save that buddha jiva, that illusion jiva in the material world. And he neglects, his incapacity is his inability to abandon it. So he could abandon us. He could totally abandon us and just leave us here to rot in this material world. And that would be fitting, because we don't, you know, we're illusioned and we're not following anything, and we commit so many sins. So why would he not abandon us? But the point here is he has an incapacity or an inability to abandon us, because he really feels that he should save us. So here it says, Krishna completely disregards all the imperfections, demerit, and transgressions of the individual, and focuses only on the positive characteristics, however small they may be. So we can have, for instance, he will never abandon the Chaitanya and can do nothing but protect it. So he's our protector. He's our only protector. As we say, the only real qualification for property is the person. It's been stated before that the only real qualification for property is that the person has to perform that surrender to the right person, that is Sriman Narayana. So he's the one who has the right, and the only right, actually, to control, to own, to love, to protect the jivas. And we find no shelter other than him. So continuing on, it says that the Chaitanya's knowledge is the Chaitanya's knowledge. So now, first of all, we talked about the Lord's these qualities in referring to the Lord, and now we're going to talk about these qualities in referring to the jiva, to the Chaitanya, right? Chaitanya means, the word Chaitanya means simply a sentient being. Okay, so the Chaitanya's knowledge is the merit of the Acharya. So for our purposes, we should concentrate on the merit of the Acharya. Whatever good things the Acharya has done, our Acharya, our teacher, and or our teachers, and it was said before, all Vaishnavas are Acharyas. So we can see all Vaishnavas, we can look at all their merits. And what to speak of that, actually, we should see that everybody has good merits. Even if they're not Acharyas, even if they're not Vaishnavas, even if they're not whoever they are, but all Chaitanyas, all living beings have some good merits. So we should see the good merits, especially in the Acharya, but also in all other living beings. And his ignorance, the Chaitanya's ignorance, the prapana we're talking about, the person who wants to surrender or understands that he is a slave of the Lord or a servant of the Lord. His ignorance is of the Acharya's defects. So whatever defects there are in the Acharya, in his knowledge, or in his behavior, in his conduct, jnana and anusthana are considered to be like two wings of a bird. You know, the jnana means knowledge, and anusthana means behavior or conduct, right conduct. So whatever good things the Acharya or the Vaishnavas or the sentient beings have, whatever good qualities they have, we should acknowledge those, and we should find those to be great. And we should not look at any defects. If there's any defects, like an Acharya might come in a low family, or he might be born in a low family, or he might be there might be so many social things. There might be so many reasons why, that even the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Abhichet suracharo bhajite mamananya bhak, that even if a person who's Krishna's devotee, if he performs bad acts, if he does some sinful acts or sinful activities or something like that, those are not considered by the Lord and should not be considered by everybody else, as long as the person is on the path. Its capacity, or the Chaitana's here, the Chaitana's capacity lies in service to the Acharya. So what the Prapana should do is he should serve his Acharya. This is very important, to serve his Acharya. In Bhagavad Gita it says, Tadvidi paripatrena pariprashnena sevaya, that you approach somebody who is a jnaninas tatpadarshinaha. The jnani, a person who's in knowledge, the Acharya should have knowledge. He should know about the Lord, and he should know about his own his relationship with the Lord, and he should be able to explain that and preach that to others, and explain that to others. And so the Chaitana, the Prapana, his shishya, his students, when they go to a teacher, they should do service for the teacher as well as ask questions. They should serve him. This is a very old concept. Even in the Vedas, they say that the brahmacharis should go and beg for the guru from house to house, or they should also collect firewood and bring it because the guru is doing fire ceremonies. So the capacity lies in the service of the Acharya. We can broaden that, the service of any Vaishnavas, or all Vaishnavas, and we can even broaden it even further. And we can say it's the service of all living beings. And then finally we have that its incapacity is doing anything which is forbidden. So here we have these four things. The Chaitana's knowledge is of the merit of the Acharya. His ignorance is of the Acharya's defects. His capacity lies in service to the Acharya, and his incapacity is not doing what the Acharya wants, right? Which it means not following the Shastras, not following the orders of the Acharya, and not following his teachings, and neglecting. So, in all cases here, when it speaks about the merit of the Acharya, the ignorance of the Acharya's defects, the service to the Acharya, the incapacity for doing what is forbidden, we should also know that this refers to all Vaishnavas also, because all Vaishnavas we consider all Vaishnavas to be like our Acharyas, and we can even, according to the Shastras, we can see even other living entities as being teachers to teach us different things like that. Chanakya Pandit says very clearly that you can accept good instruction even from a child. So if a child tells you something and it's right, then you should take notice of that, even though you think, oh, the child shouldn't, doesn't know anything, or the child doesn't have as much experience as me, but if a child tells you something which is true and it's a good teaching, accept it like that. So we can accept good teachings from anywhere. The other part to that saying of Chanakya is you can accept gold even from a filthy place, right? Or a good wife from a low family, right? So these are the other examples given. But we should accept teachings from anybody. If anybody tells us something, for instance, we have the example of Bilva Mangala Thakur, also known in South India more commonly as Leela Sukha. His other name was Leela Sukha. He wrote a book called Krishna Karnamrita about Lord Krishna. And when he was a young man, he used to visit a prostitute. Her name was Chintamani. And one night, the story is that one night there was a big storm. There was a big storm, and like a hurricane, very, very big monsoon storm. and he was trying to get to this house of his girlfriend, of this prostitute, and the bridge had been collapsed. He couldn't cross the river, but he wanted so much to be with this woman that he swam the river, even though the river was in spate. The river was flooding, and it was very dangerous to swim at night in a river that's flooding, or even in the day. And there's so many things which are carried down. So he grabbed a hold as he was swimming across. He grabbed something which he thought was a stick to sort of steady himself in the water. When he got to the other side, he found that was a snake. So, even like that, then he came to her house. It was all boarded up. She didn't think he was going to come that night because it was such a big storm. And he had to climb up, the side of the house, and to get into the house, he had so many problems. So she said, "Oh my God, you came in the middle of this storm." And when he told her how he had to cross the river by swimming and doing all these things, she was amazed. And she said to him, "If you put that much energy that you're putting into coming to see me, if you put that much energy into serving God, you'd be a saint." And he was taken aback by this instruction that came from Chintamani, the prostitute. But he took it to heart. He said, "Yeah, you're right. I come to think of it, that's true." So then this was like a revelation to him. This was something that he realized. Oh, she's right. And so what he did was he gave up everything, and he went off, and he became a Vaisnava, very great Vaisnava. But he always remembered that this is the person who was like my guru. And this type of guru we call as a Vatma Pradashika guru, or a Pata Pradashika guru. Somebody that shows you the way. Maybe that person doesn't initiate you. Maybe that person doesn't teach you fully about spiritual life. But, as Chanakya says, if a child tells you something, if anybody tells you something, it teaches you something and pushes you more on the path to spiritual life, that person is like a teacher. So the word guru means teacher. So we have to accept if somebody tells us something which is for our own good spiritually, then if we associate with other people who are also like-minded, persons who are Vaishnavas, or persons who are devotees, who are Prapanas, who are surrendered to the Lord, then naturally we're going to hear some good ideas from them, and they're going to hear some good ideas from us, and that'll be the way it is. So so let's continue on, and just one moment. Sorry, I just had to let somebody in. Okay, so the Chaitana's knowledge is of the merit of the Acharya, and his ignorance is of the Acharya's defects. This is Sutra 299. Its capacity, the Chaitana's capacity, we're talking about the Prapana here, the surrendered soul, it lies in service to the Acharya, and his incapacity is not doing what is forbidden in the Shastras or forbidden by the Acharyas, like that. The Chaitana, too, should regard the Acharya's defects and only focus on his good qualities. He should serve the Acharya and strenuously avoid all acts which are against Dharma. So now we come to the next section. The next section is the four categories. We're having a series of 4 things here. So last week we had four stages of spiritual unfoldment, because we had before that we had Pillala Acharya talking about a whole plan of how to advance along the path of spiritual life. Although we really don't have to worry so much about it, because the Lord himself is the person who is taking the initiative to save us, because the Prapana simply surrenders to the Lord, and the Lord becomes the primary means of our salvation. But anyhow, he's outlined this system of spiritual unfoldment, and he gives 4 stages to that, which we covered last time. And then we just covered 4 four attributes of the prapana, of the person who's surrendered. And now we're going to talk about four categories of forbidden acts. So it's always like this. Whenever you read shastras, they'll give do's and they'll give don'ts. They'll say in order to emphasize something. Even this goes back also to even Vedic initiation or Upanayanam, where the Guru says ma divaha swapsihi, don't sleep in the day. He tells the brahmachari, don't sleep in the day. I mean, sleep only at night. So an example of do's and don'ts would be if the Guru says if he says to the disciple, only sleep in the night. That's a thing that he should do. He tells the brahmachari. And the don't, he says to him, he says, don't sleep in the day, right? So these are two ways of saying the same thing. So normally when in shastras, it's very common that you'll get this sort of thing. Even when you talk about different vratas and different pujas and different things that you can do, different festivals that you get, it'll say, oh, you should do it on this day. You should not do it on this other day. Or you should do it this way, but you should not do it the other way. So this is called yama and niyama. The word yama, of course, we know the word yamaraj. Raj means king. So yamaraj means the king of rules. But there are two types of rules. There's the do's and the don'ts. So yamaraj is the king of yama. So in that case, the word yama means also niyama. Yama means do's, and niyama means don'ts. Okay? So there's these different types. So here we have the next section is also going to be four things. So we had the four stages of spiritual unfoldment, the four qualities of the prapana, which we just covered, and now we're going to go four categories of forbidden acts. Okay, so Sutra 300, there are four categories of forbidden acts, and 301 says what they are. Number one, doing proscribed acts, right? Now, in English, there's these two words, prescribed, P-R-E, and proscribed, P-R-O. Prescribed means if you go to a pharmacy, if you go to a drugstore and you ask for a prescription, right? A prescription, the doctor gives you a prescription. It means what you should take for your illness. So you go to the chemist and you say, this is my prescription. So the Guru will the Shastras give us prescriptions. They give us things to do. They give us do's. But they also give us proscriptions. Proscriptions is what not to do. Don't do that, don't do that. Okay, so here it is. So doing prescribed acts, that's the first things doing things which should not be done. That is the first category. Second is offending the Lord. These are getting more and more heinous. These are getting more and more bad, right? The first is if we do something bad against the Guru, against the scriptures, against Dharma. And the second is offending the Lord. So we might do some puja, or we might go into some temple, and somehow or other we've committed some offense to the deity or to the Lord. Mostly our relationship with the Lord is through the deity in the temple. Third one is committing an offense to the Lord's wards or other devotees, other Vaishnavas. So these are called, first of all, the first one we would say is apachara, or here it's said in the Manipravala, it says akrityakarnam. Akrityakarnam. So kritya in Sanskrit means, kri means to do. Akri means don't do. Don't do. It's the opposite of kri. Kri means to do. Akri means not to do. So akrityakarnam. Do it, the cause by doing what is not meant to be done. Okay? That would be an offense. Aparada, a sin. So the second thing is a specific sin to God. So here that's mentioned as Bhagavat apachara. Yeah, we may be we may be, instead of apachara, we may also use the word aparada. Okay, we're probably used to this word aparada. Aparada means an offense or a sin. And the same thing, apachara also means the same thing. So Bhagavat means God, and apachara means an offense to God or a sin to God, right? Offending God, like that. Now, there's Bhagavata, and there's Bhagavata with a long A. So short A, Bhagavata, and long A, Bhagavata. The Bhagavatas are the persons who are the devotees of God, or the other Prapanas, the other people who are Vaishnavas who are surrendered to God. So that's the third offense. So even more heinous or even more terrible than committing a sin against the Shastra is a sin against the Lord. And even more terrible than that sin is a sin against the devotees. And the fourth one, it says, the intolerable offense. And I'm hesitating to understand. I'm probably is an offense to the acharya. Okay, but we'll see. All right. So, okay. So here we go, and let's going to get this in detail. What these different offenses are. So, in order of their offensive nature. Doing things against Dharma, doing things against God, doing things against God's devotees, and doing things against the acharya, or the intolerable offense. So, first, an explanation of doing things against Dharma. So, prescribed or forbidden acts are those which cause pain to other sentient beings. So we can, what immediately springs to my mind is the teachings of the Buddha, right? Although he's not a Vaishnava, but Buddhists say this whole world is full of suffering, and their objective is to negate suffering. In fact, the word nirvana, which is their idea of the goal, simply means to extinguish. The word nirvana in Sanskrit means extinguish. So if you have a candle and the candle's lit and you blow it out or you wave it out, you've extinguished it. So the idea of the Buddhists is to extinguish the pain and suffering of samsara. They see samsara as all pain, and their idea is to get rid of suffering. Okay, so yeah, so that's a good point. I see in the chat somebody said that therefore Vaishnavas should be vegetarians, and of course there are some examples of non-vegetarian Vaishnavas like Garuda, who eats snakes. Maybe I'm not sure, Bhimasena. There may have been some historically, and also even today there might be some non-vegetarian Vaishnavas. Obviously, if you kill another living being to eat that living being's body, that's causing pain to other sentient beings. There are some people who go further than that and say we don't want to cause pain even by supporting by supporting the dairy industry, so they become vegans. You have other people who take it even further. Finally, you have the people who want to be like the rishis of the Vedas, who went out into the forest, and they simply subsisted on fruits and leaves that fell off the trees. So they didn't even cause enough pain. They didn't even pluck the fruits from the trees, because they thought maybe by plucking, I'm going to cause pain to that tree. So this is an extreme example. In the Jain religion also, that you have some examples like this. The sadhus wear a mask so they don't breathe any microbes. They sweep in front of their feet. They filter their water so they don't drink any microbes. So they won't light fires, because these are some of the places in the Vedas it's spoken about that the grihasta who has a fire in his house, who sweeps and does all these different things. There are some things where we are going to cause pain or suffering to other living entities. If we just walk in the street, we may crush an ant, or it's very difficult to live in this material world and not to cause pain to other living beings. But of course, there's a range of pains. We don't say that a person who accidentally steps on an ant is as bad as a person who purposefully kills a cow in order to eat meat. So there's a range of prescribed acts here. Okay, but in general, the doctrine is that we should try to let all living beings live a happy life, and not cause them any pain if we can, or pain or suffering. So that includes mental suffering, that includes physical suffering, whatever it is. Okay, so the second thing here, he says, okay, prescribed acts which cause pain to other sentient beings. Sycophancy. Sycophancy means, well, Prapana is not a sycophant because he should be surrendered to the Supreme Lord and to the Acharya and to nobody else. And he shouldn't be going around trying to flatter the king or flatter somebody who's in a high position to get some sort of benefit. So sycophancy is not to be, and he also shouldn't have people who are working perhaps under him. He shouldn't encourage them to be sycophants of him. Adultery with the wives of others. That's just a very obvious social injunction there. Appropriating what belongs to others, stealing, in other words. Telling untruths, saying things which are not true. Eating forbidden items, right? And this, we could go on all day about the different rules and regulations there are in the scriptures about eating things which are forbidden. But normally the point is that whatever we eat, well, what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Yat kurosi yadasnasi, yat jahosi dadasi yat, tat yat tapasasi kaunteya, tat kurushwa madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer and give away, you do it as a service unto me. Do it as a service unto me. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to get some more details about, that was talking about what is adharma, how we should not do adharmic things. And in Sutra 303, we talk about offending the Lord. So that is the second category of apachara or aparada or sin or offense that is being mentioned here. There are 4 categories. So the next one is what we call Bhagavad apachara, the offending the Lord. Affront to the Lord is as follows. Considering that Perumal is simply another God. That's the very first thing, okay? So we've heard this all before also. Even in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's this, this is one of the offenses for chanting the holy name. To think that Lord Sriman Narayana or Krishna is equal to other devatas, like Indra, like Brahma, like Shiva, right? There are many people who feel like this. They think, oh, the smartest especially, they think, oh no, Shiva, Devi, Ganesh, Murugan, Kartikeya, all these different devatas, they're all the same. Everybody's the same. Sriman Narayana has his entourage and his leelas, and the Shiva has his, and considering that Perumal is just, or Sriman Narayana is just like any other devata, there's all these different devatas. Now, one thing we have an advantage, or some people have an advantage if you're coming from a society which is mainly monotheistic to start with, right? Then when you encounter Hinduism with so many different gods, 33 crores of gods, which means 330 million gods. Although in the Upanishads it does say that this is not to be taken, say, literally, but there's a reason for using big numbers. But there are many in the Puranas. If we read the Puranas, we'll read about these different devatas. Okay, so and in fact, there's even more demons. There's also there's suras and asuras. Suras means devatas, people who are demigods, or we call them in general, or devata is a better word because it just means minor gods like that, but not the supreme god. Not because Sriman Narayana, there can be nobody equal to or greater than him. And then there are other people who are against religion or against gods. They're asuras or asuras, not suras, not devotees. Okay, so that's a simple one. Considering that Parimal is similar or is equal to, or that in fact other devatas are even greater than Sriman Narayana. This is an offense to the Lord. Thinking that avatars like Rama and Krishna are simply ordinary men, when it says in the scriptures that there are certain avatars. Now there's different types of avatars. Okay, so there are what we call avesh avatars, and there are purna avatars, or there are full avatars, right? So there are either full avatars of the Lord, like Rama and Krishna, Narasimha, and then there might be other mentions in the scriptures of certain forms of the Lord which are considered to be empowered jivas, that they're actually an atma, they're actually a jivatman, but the Lord has given them some power to do something. So like in the Bhagavata Purana, it talks about Prithu and Achi, the king and queen at a certain time, they were empowered by the Lord. And in fact, all over Asia, the idea was, and in many parts of the world, there was an idea called the divine right of kings, that a king was a representative of God. And in fact, in Thailand today, even the kings have the name Rama 1, Rama 2, Rama 3, Rama the 4th, Rama the 5th, Rama the 9th, right? They all have the name of Rama, and their ancestral capital in Thailand was called Ayutthaya, which means Ayodhya. So in Nepal, they thought up until recently, very recently, all the citizens worshipped the king as being a representative of God. So this is called a Raja Rishi. Raja means king, and Rishi means a saint. A saintly king is considered to be a representative of God. And so just like in the British Raj system, when the British were controlling India, they had a person called a viceroy, who was the representative of the King of England, or the Emperor of the British Empire. And he was there in India, and he was treated just like the king. So there are those sorts of jivas also who are given special powers by the Lord. And in fact, all of us are given some powers to do some things, because without the power of the Lord, we can't do anything. The jiva by itself can't do anything. So we're all, to a certain extent, a greater or lesser extent, we're getting some power from the Supreme Lord, right? If we have a great power to do something, like Narada has a great power, Narada Rishi has a great power to give bhakti to people, to explain devotion to people, to the Lord. So he is like an avesh, we call it avesh, avatar. He's invested with this bhakti shakti, the power of devotion. So he's called Bhakti Avesh avatar. So there's different types of avatars. There's basically these two different types of avatars. But when it's specifically stated in the scriptures that an avatar is one of the forms of Sriman Narayana himself, like Krishna and Rama, then we shouldn't think them to be ordinary men. But we also shouldn't think these Shaktavesh avatars are also ordinary men. Narada Muni is not an ordinary man. And these different, even the saintly kings of old, they weren't ordinary men. They were Raja Rishis. So we shouldn't think of Rama and Krishna simply as ordinary men, right? So different avatars. So there are different types of avatars. If we read the Bhagavad Purana, there's a list in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto of different avatars. And there are some avatars which are Purna avatars, like Narasimha, like Krishna, like Rama. They're complete avatars. They're fully, exactly non-different from Sriman Narayana. But there are other people in that list who are empowered living beings. Empowered living beings. Okay, so then continuing on, so that's the second thing. Practicing rituals which are unsuitable for one's social status, vana, and ashrama. That's very interesting because we have to then understand what is vana and ashrama, right? So social status, and in general, we have rituals that are performed by certain sections of society, and we have some rituals which are not performed by this. Now, these are not really Vaishnava rituals. Normally, the Vaishnava system is like a parallel to the Varnashram system. So the Vaishnava system goes on. So, for instance, in Sri Vaishnavism, all people, men, women, whatever caste, whatever ashram they're in, like that in society, they all do samashranam, they all do property, they all surrender to the Lord, and that's the most important thing. At the same time, they live in a society. So in society, they live in society, and they act in certain ways in society according to their guna and karma. According to Bhagavad Gita, it says, Chatur Varnam Maya Shrishtam. So Krishna says he creates this system, and it's there from the Rig Veda, Purusha Sukta, 10th Mandala, 90th Sukta of the Rig Veda, which is most ancient Veda. Brahmanosyamukamasid Bahu Rajanyakritaha Uru Tarasya Vaishaha Padbyam Sudro Ajayata. So there are these 4 divisions. These are called, people in general, they call them caste divisions, right? They're just a division of people in society according to the way those people are inclined by their qualities, gunas, and by their work, what they do for a living, or what they spend most of their time doing by their work. So work, and by your qualities and your work, and normally the people will have certain qualities, and they'll work in situations. If it's a good society, they'll be placed in a situation where they work, or they'll gravitate towards doing a work which is suited for their qualities. So the Vedic system is that there are these 4 varnas and 4 ashramas, and there are therefore 10 different types of people in societies, because it's not just a matter of having 4 by 4, but apparently there are certain restrictions of ashrama for certain varnas. So if somebody's a Brahmin, maybe he can go through all the ashramas: brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. If he's a grihastha, he can. I'm sorry. If he's a kshatriya, then he'll be brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, but he won't take sannyas. In the normal system, according to most dharma shastras like Manu and Apastamba, different people like that, this is the system. Then if a person is a Vaishya, who the kshatriya is an administrator or a politician, the Vaishya will be the businessman or entrepreneur, and that person will be a brahmachari and also be grihastha, but he won't take vanaprastha or sannyas, right? And then finally we have the Sudras, and the Sudras are the people who are the workers, and those people will just only be in the grihastha ashram, only one ashram for them. So 4, 3, 2, 1 ashrams. So 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 10. There are 10 different types of people in the Varnashram society, according to the mixture of Varnas and Ashramas that they have, like that. Now, we can see this in pretty much all societies. There are these sort of people, right? Maybe not exactly known by those names, those Sanskrit names, and maybe not exactly following all of the social aspects, or the aspects mentioned in Dharma Shastra, the little details in Dharma Shastra in every society, but they're there. Okay, so according to where one fits in a society, there are certain there are certain things in society that one is supposed to perform, and certain other things. These are specifically when it talks about practicing rituals, it's talking about the Indian context here of perhaps doing particular samskaras. So a person who is in the position of a Brahmin, he would be doing certain samskaras, and perhaps Sudras, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, they might be doing certain samskaras. Some of them might not be done by Sudras, or some rituals may not be performed by brahmacharis, but they're only performed by grihastas or only by sannyasis, like that. So This is very much talking about rituals that have to do with social aspects of the society. Now, one problem with this whole idea is the fact that we live in Kali Yuga. Now, living in Kali Yuga, there's also a statement in the Shastra that says, Kalo Sudra Sambhavan. There are some things which are forbidden in Kali Yuga, right? There are actually 5 things which are, according to Shastra, which are forbidden in Kali Yuga. One is offering meat to the forefathers in the Shraddha ceremony, begetting a child with your brother's widow, taking of sannyas, horse sacrifice, and cow sacrifice, I believe. I'm not sure if I've got them all right. Those 5 things. Anyway, I can find the Sanskrit for it. But also we can also read in the Dharma Shastras that or we can read from the Puranas, Kalo Sudra Sambhavan, that everyone is basically born in Kali Yuga as a Sudra. So the thing is, even though everybody is considered to be like a Sudra in Kali Yuga, still, amongst those Sudras, you have people who are working as intellectuals, people who are working as administrators, people who are working as business entrepreneurs, and people who are working as workers. So you still have that class division, but everybody more or less is a Sudra. The wonderful thing about the Vaishnava system, which goes on parallel with the social system, because we live in modern times, we live in many societies, and those societies are not actually divided up in the same way as they were in ancient India. But, you know, we still see those divisions of people and their work in different societies. It's just that it's not exactly the same as it, you know, for instance, we don't expect people in other societies to be following the rituals of the ancient or the medieval Varnashram society in India. Like that. Okay, so these are things. So practicing rituals which are unsuitable for one's social status, varna and ashrama, like that. So this would have been more, probably this particular part here is more applicable if you're actually living in a system which is following more strictly the medieval system of varna ashrama, and then you're considered either qualified or unqualified to perform particular rituals like Upanayanam, the samskaras, or even any of the samskaras, like that. So to get really into this, we have to have a deep discussion of Dharma Shastras, which talk about the Varnashram system, and we have to equate it to the Vaishnava system. Now, there are some things in the Varnashram system, although the Varnashram system is supposed to be a good way to run society, there are some things which we can't practice today, and there are some things also that we find in Vaishnava society that they conflict with our practice of Vaishnavism. So it's a very involved discussion. But this will also depend upon the advice that we get from the other Vaishnavas, especially from the Acharya, of how he interprets the Shastras. Now, remember, we have a hierarchy of Shastras, right? So on the hierarchy of Shastras, the Shastras that deal with this subject, the Varnashram system, are sort of very low on the totem pole. They're sort of low on the scale. The highest Shastra that we started off in the beginning of Sri Vacana Bhusanam talking about, Pillai Lokacharya is talking about the highest Shastras are the Vedas. So there are Vedic injunctions, and those Vedic injunctions should be followed. But then just a little bit lower than that, we have the Itihasas, of which we have Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana, remember he said the story about the prisoner, meaning when Sita Devi was kept in the Ashokavana, the Ashok forest by Ravana. That story of Ramayana, that is the highest Shastra apart from the Upanishads and Vedas. And then below that, Mahabharata. Below that, the Sattvic Puranas. Remember, there's 18 Mahapuranas, and 3 are considered in the mode of goodness, 3 in the mode of passion, 3 in the mode of ignorance. So the Sattvic Puranas. And below that, we have other scriptures like these Dharma Shastras. So these Dharma Shastras come down. They come down down not exactly on the top level of Shastras. So if there's a conflict between Vedic understanding and the understanding in the Dharma Shastras. For instance, the understanding, I was just explaining this to somebody yesterday, the understanding of caste is only according to birth in the Dharma Shastras. So if you read Manu, it says if you have a pure Brahmin father and a pure Brahmin mother, then you can have a Brahmin child, and you can't otherwise. You can't, like that. So there's no, it's not, and then there's so many what we call Vana Sankara. If there's different people, if the Brahmin marries a Kshatriya, Brahmin marries a Vaishya, right? Whether a Brahmin lady marries a Vaishya man, or a Vaishya lady marries a Brahmin man, like this there are different mixtures, and that's called Vana Sankara, or mixing up of caste. So it's very much to do with birth. The Dharma Shastras, which talk about Varnashram. But as I say, the Upanishads are of greater importance. And so there's one Upanishad called Vajrasuchika Upanishad, which says actually the real understanding of who is a Brahmin is not according to birth. So we have to take that as a higher pramana. We accept that as a higher pramana. Similarly, we also have some stories in other Upanishads, like there's a story of Satyakam Jabala. There was one boy, he wasn't born in a Brahmin family, but he wanted to go to Gurukul like the other Brahmin boys. So he approached the teacher and he said, will you teach me? Will you accept me in the school, like that? The teacher said, well, what caste are you? And so he said, I don't know. So he said, go home and ask your mother. Her mother was a maidservant, and she had this child out of wedlock with one of the masters in one of the houses that she cleaned. And so she just said to her son, your father is, because he wanted to know, what's my gotra, so what's my father's name, like that. So she said, your father is Satyakama, pure love, or true love. And so when he went back and he naively told this to the guru, and the guru understood that this child was a bastard child of a maidservant, and therefore he couldn't be of pure birth. But because he had that one trait, that one Brahminical trait of truthfulness. Remember, it was just being said here. It was just being said here in Sutra 302. Telling untruths. Telling untruths is a bad thing. So it's also stated in the Bhagavatam that Dharma. There's one analogy that there's a cow. That Dharma, or religiosity, is in the form of a cow, and the cow has 3 broken legs, and only one leg is still all right, and that is in Kali Yuga. It means that there are these other sinful things going on, but at least there's a little bit of truthfulness going on, still available to us in Kali Yuga. So in the Kama Jabala story in the Chandogya Upanishad, the guru sees that this boy is truthful, no matter what. He doesn't shy away from the fact that he's a bastard son of a maidservant. He just says, I am this, and do you accept me or not? And the guru says, yes, I accept you because you told me the truth. Because you told me the truth. So this is a very important aspect, a very important quality of people today. And especially today when we have so many what we call fake news and untruths, and so many, to be able to understand what is truth, what is reality, and what is illusion, right? This is what is said in the Upanishad, even in the first couple of verses of the Bhagavatam. It says to be able to establish what is truth from illusion, to understand what is truth, right, and practice truthfulness. So that's very important. Okay, so then these scriptures that I'm talking about, the story of Satyakama Jabala and the Vajrasuchika Upanishad, these are coming from the Shruti, much older and much higher scriptures than the Dharma Shastras of Manu and these others. So if there's a conflict between a higher scripture and a lower scripture, we have to take always the higher scripture as being more important if there's a conflict. And we just understand that at a certain point in Indian history, the whole caste system became about birth and nothing but. But its original intention wasn't that. So we should take what the original intention is, and we should see what the truth of the matter is, and we should not be fooled by later things that came in and later problems that came in like that. So anyway, it's some Vaishnavas are more concerned with the Varnashrama. Actually, Pillai Lokacharya and the followers of the Tenacharya Sampradaya, the Tengalais, give less importance to the social status in Varnashrama, which we've seen before, right? In these books. But the Vadagalais, or the northern school, the Deshika Sampradaya, so-called Deshika Sampradaya, the followers of Vedanta Deshika, because Vedanta Deshika was living originally in Kanchipuram, mixing with a lot of Smarta Brahmins, right? He had to fight against the Smartas. So he had to have a very staunch standard when it came to Varnashram. He couldn't perhaps admit certain things that were admitted by the Sri Rangamacharyas, that we see all the different castes, all the Bhagavatas, all the Vaishnavas of all different castes as being equal. He couldn't admit that because the Smartas would say, no, we can't accept that because this is against Dharma Shastra. You can't believe that. But we have a greater understanding coming from the Vedas and also coming from our Vaishnava principles. What are our principles? Our principles are you're not that body. Even though you live in society and you're going to gravitate because of the body and the mind complex that comes with the jiva. You're going to gravitate to a particular job and a particular place in that society. Still, ultimately, the real truth is that you're not that body, and therefore we take it, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmani Gavihastini Suni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshana, that a person of real knowledge sees, a person who is a pandita, somebody who really sees with real knowledge, he sees no difference between the cow and the elephant, the dog and the dog eater, the Brahman and the Chandala. He doesn't see any difference between these because he sees the spiritual essence of these people. So that is a higher doctrine than the doctrine of seeing each person. But still, we still have to see each person in society, in their role in society like that. And in many times in normal day-to-day life, we react to people in another way. It's obviously we're not like complete avadutas where we see everybody as one sort of thing, in the sense that when we call people for the Zoom class, we want to call the dogs and the cows and the elephants to come to Zoom class. We're not going to call them because they can't understand. They're in animal bodies right now. Spiritually, they're equal to us. The plants also spiritually equal. All living sentient beings are spiritually equal, but we also have to understand that they're in a different body. So there's going to be different outreach to them. So a different way. So anyway, this is a very, very complex part here, and different people interpret it in different ways because of course somebody can very strictly follow the Indian Varnashram system, but in that case, they make different allowances for instance, in the Deshika Sampradaya, the Vadagalais, because they're more attached to the rules and regulations of the Varnashram society given in the Dharma Shastras. Therefore, they won't give Omkara to ladies and to Sudras, people who are mlechas or foreigners, right? So they'll say you can only have Namo Narayanaya or Am Namo Narayanaya, not Om Namo Narayanaya as a mantra. And so they'll say like that because, but it's more or less a sort of a very archaic way of looking at things, because today, everybody's chanting Gayatri Mantra, everybody's chanting Omkara, you're hearing it from the loudspeakers from the top of the temple. So there are, however, rules in Varnashram, in Manu, and other Dharma Shastras, there are rules that a person who's not a Trivarnika, who hasn't had Upanayanam, either a woman or hasn't got the sacred thread and hasn't been initiated into the Gayatri Mantra, they shouldn't chant Om, they shouldn't chant Vedic mantras. So if they hear those Vedic mantras, they're supposed to be killed. They're supposed to have molten lead poured in their ears, and there are all these drastic, draconian punishments. Or if they speak the Vedic mantras or Omkara, they're supposed to be pierced with a spear until dead. These are all, so we have similar sets of rules and regulations like that in many scriptures. Like in the Christian religion, they have the Old Testament has a lot of punishments like this for certain things. So you have so we call, there's a section in the Old Testament called Leviticus, which has a lot of these archaic punishments for certain things like that. And similarly, we called Manu to be like the Leviticus of Hinduism, basically, Manu. So Manu Dharma Shastras are less important. The Vedas are more important. The other scriptures like Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Satvik Puranas are much more important to us, like that. So to summarize about Varnashram, we are in Kali Yuga. Dharma has got one leg, that is truthfulness, and we should always speak the truth, and therefore we will be accepted according to our guna and karma, according to our qualities of truthfulness. And so this is what they say the Brahman's qualities are in Bhagavad Gita. Tapa, samadama, tapa, socham, shantimajamamevacha, yanam, vijnanam, astikam, brahma, kama, swabhavajam. So Krishna says so. Sama means equanimity, seeing everybody equal. That's the first thing for Brahmins. For a person who's spiritually advanced, right? What does a Brahmin mean? A Brahmin means a person who is studying or learning about or wants to know the Supreme, right? So, sama, dhamma, tapa, austerity, socham, cleanliness. So these are all different aspects. We can read Bhagavad Gita about that. So, again, the Gita is more important than, the teachings of the Gita are more important because the Gita is considered like an Upanishad, Gita Upanishad. So more important than the Dharma Shastras of Manu, which say, no, if you're a foreigner, you can't be a Brahmin, you can't be a Trivarnika, you can't perform these ceremonies like that. So there's some interpretation here according to different societies. I would say that if Indian society was working the way it was 500 or 1,000 years ago, then certainly these would be more applicable rules and regulations in that society. And in other societies, there are other rules and regulations. For example, in the Ramayana, Lord Rama and Lakshmana, they met with Hanuman and Sugriva and Bali, right? And they were all Vanaras, which some people say are like monkeys, So they were living, they had their own society. They had their own kings, they had their own Brahmins, they had their own ministers, they had their own different types. They had marriages, they had wives, they had all these things that we have in our human societies, and they were a type they could communicate. So maybe they were a type of human, right? But some people call Vanara a monkey, but we don't know. Okay, but they had a society similar to the Indian society, but it was also a little bit different. So foreign societies also, we look at medieval societies in Europe, all over the world, they also had these type of things. They had kings, they had serfs who were basically like slaves or sudras. They had the barons, the people who were the Kshatriyas of Europe. And then you had the Vaishyas, the guild, the people who made the guilds, in Holland and these places. So throughout European history, ancient American history, even before the Westerners came there, all over the world, these divisions are there. Why? Because in the Vedas, it says God created society, human society, to have these divisions. So, but the details are a little bit different in different places. So I don't expect the exact details to be the same in the society of Vaishnavas, even in India today or in the West today, right? Because we're not exactly following that that medieval Indian system. Okay, so that was a lot about that, practicing rituals that are unsuitable for one's social status, Varna Ashrama. Third thing here, is that third? Yeah, fourth thing, speculating about the material of which the icons are made. So deities are normally made of metal or wood or granite or marble. When we go in the temple, we see that, or they can be made of paint. if you have a picture of a deity which you can worship, a painting, it can be a jewel. So there are different forms. If you want to read the different forms, the 8 different forms are mentioned in the Bhagavad Purana in the 11th canto, 27th chapter, which is Lord Krishna's instructions on deity worship. So you can go there and you can see. It talks about the different forms that the Lord will inhabit, will come into, that we can worship the Lord through. Okay, the authorized forms, right? So metal, wood, these different forms. Even worship the Lord in water, worship the Lord in fire. There is different ways to worship the Lord. So, but when we worship the Lord in these forms, we don't think of those forms as being the matter. We don't think of those forms as being material. So there's a statement in Padma Purana that a person who thinks like that has a hellish mentality. You shouldn't think of the Acharya as an ordinary man. You shouldn't think of a Vaishnava as coming from a particular caste. You shouldn't think of the deity in the temple as being made of a particular material element, because we do, when we install the deity, when we do the prana pratishtha of the deity, we perform certain ceremonies where we mentally perform and mantrically destroy the material elements in the deity's body and recreate spiritual elements like that. We also do that when we do deity worship. We learn a process which is called Bhuta Shuddhi, where we meditate. It's a meditation. So all of this is by meditation and by mantra. And it's all there in the scriptures. It's given to us by God, how to worship him and how to invoke him in a particular form so that we can offer worship to him and he'll accept it. So we just follow the scriptures, and whatever way God wants to be worshipped, he will say in the scriptures. And so we follow that. This is why in the Sankalpa, in the vows that we take, when we do different rituals, we say, Bhagavad Agyaya, Bhagavad Kainkarya Rupam. Bhagavad Agyaya means the order of God, right? The order of God is the scriptures. Bhagavad Agyaya and Bhagavad Kainkarya Rupam, for his service. So whatever he says, however he wants to be worshipped, we follow that. So then continuing on, so we shouldn't speculate. We shouldn't think of the deity as stone or wood or metal, like that. We should think that this is non-different from the Supreme Lord, because the way the deity has been installed, we consider him to be non-different from the Supreme Lord. Then considering the self to be separate from Godhead. Okay, so the individual self within the body, right, is spiritual, just like a spark which comes out of the fire. A spark is nothing but a small fire. So it's a piece that comes out of the fire. So, or we can also say the sun ray and the sunshine, the sun planet, these are all one thing, like that. So of course, the Vedantic philosophy, in Vedanta, we talk about 3 real realities. We talk about God, Ishvara, we call Jagat, the universe, right? Or matter, the universe of matter, and the Jiva, the Chaitana, the sentient beings. So in Sri Vaishnavism, a lot of times we say Chit, Achit, Ishvara. Chit means sentient beings. Achit means insentient beings like matter. And Ishvara means God. So these 3 things. So in Vedanta philosophy, we talk about the difference and sameness between these 3 things, right? So there are different types of philosophy. Some philosophies like Advaita, they say all these things are exactly one and the same. They're only one thing. There's not 3 things. 3 things is an illusion. And then you have other people like the Dvaitins, the Madhvas, they say, no, they're all separate, all completely separate. They don't have any relationship to each other, right? But Ramanuja's philosophy, or the philosophy of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, is called Vishishta Advaita. Advaita means the non-difference, but specific non-differences. Specific, Vishishta, specified. The holistic non-difference. Difference and non-difference at the same time in specific way. And the way that Ramanuja, the analogy that he gives is called Sharira Shariri Bhava. So Bhava means the concept in this sense, right? Bhava means the doctrine of Sharira Shariri, the body and the soul, the body and the soul. So we have two bodies. We have a gross body and we have a subtle body, but then we have a soul, and the soul is different from the body, right? But when we look at a person, we see we see holistically that there's a person there. This person is the soul, and he's covered also by his body and his mind and his intelligence and his ego. This is described in Bhagavad Gita also in the 7th chapter. These are material elements, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These are 8 elements. And Krishna says, these are my separated elements. Bina prakriti. Prakriti means elements. Bina means separate. They are separated from me, right? These are separated. So we can understand they come from Krishna. Everything comes from Krishna. Everything comes from Sriman Narayana. Sriman Narayana is the source of everything, right? Right? Because Narayanad Brahmo Jayate, Narayanad Indro Jayate, Narayanad Prajapati Pajayante, Atanityo Narayanaha. So before Brahma, before Shiva, before all these others, Narayana was there. Narayana is the source. Janmad Yasyayataha, that from which everything emanates, is Sriman Narayana. So everything comes from him, so everything's made out of him. He is not only the potter who makes the pot, but he is also the clay which the pot is made out of, in terms of Vedanta, right? In Vedanta, they talk about the efficient cause of the universe and the souls, and the material cause, right? So the efficient cause of a pot is the potter, the person who does it. The material cause of a pot is the clay, or the material that it's made out of. So there's an efficient cause, which is called, there's a nimitta karna and upadana karna. Karna means cause. So there's a efficient cause and there's a material cause. In Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, I'm sorry if I'm getting a little bit Vedantic here on you, but in Sri Vaisnava Sampradaya, the idea is that God is both he's the cause of all things. He's not only causes things because he makes the world, he creates everything. Everything's created out of him. Everything is also created out of him. So from him. So we are also created out of him. So therefore we are also like him. So to think that we are separate from him is like saying that the pot is separate from the clay. No, the pot is not separate from the clay. The clay and the pot are one. Right? They're one material. Or there's another example they give in the scriptures too, a lump of gold and a ring, gold ring. The lump of gold and the ring are the same. It's just been shaped in a different way. That's all. So we are very small. The soul is called Anu, like a spark, very small. Whereas in the Upanishads it says 10,000 sizes tip of a hair. Of course, that's just an analogy to try and give us the idea that it's very, very small. In fact, it's minute, right? So very, very small, and he's very, very great. Anu and Vibhu. Vibhu is the Supreme Lord is Vibhu. He's all expansive. In fact, he's everywhere. He's all pervasive. And we are not all pervasive. We are only in one particular place, and we are very, very small. So we have the potency of a spark. He has the potency of a fire, like that. But we are not separate from him. We are not separate from him in that way, right? So people shouldn't misunderstand this. It doesn't mean that you are God. You're not God. You aren't God, right? But in one sense, you are God. In the sense that you are from God. You're made from God, and you're meant to serve him. So you are part of him, because he's everything. So you're part of everything. So therefore, you're a part of God in that sense, right? So we are not to think that we're separate from God, completely separate from God. Okay. And then taking property dedicated to the Lord. Taking property dedicated to the Lord. So now, this is interesting. Taking property dedicated to the Lord. What is the first thing that we have done? We have stolen ourselves from the Lord. We are thieves because we are the property of the Lord. And we think that we are our own property, right? In this material world, we think that we, at least even if I don't control other people, even if I don't control a lot of resources in this material world, I think that I control myself, or I am my own master. No, you're not your own master even. If you think you're your own master, You have taken property which is dedicated to the Lord. So this has a very simple meaning. It means that we don't go to the temple and steal things which belong to the deity. We don't take other things. But the Lord has created everything. So everything's the property of the Lord, right? Including us. We're also the property of the Lord. So that mentality that thinks that anything belongs to us, or we can use anything, or that we are the controller or master of anything, is wrong. And we have to give up that mentality totally. And we should realize that not only everything around us belongs to the Lord, but we also belong to the Lord. So that's the point here. So this is a very, very nice sutra here, because it explains all these different aspects. Okay, so that we had prescribed acts, proscribed acts defined. Then we have Bhagavata Apachara, and now the third thing, or the offenses to the Lord. Now we're going to see offenses to Vaishnavas, offenses to the others, right? So stealing the Lord's property oneself, Sutra 304. Stealing the Lord's property oneself, aiding others to steal it, receiving these stolen articles from others, whether solicited or unsolicited, are acts that cause great displeasure of the Lord. So he's going on here. This is also, it seems like 304 is a continuation of offenses or sins against the Lord. So just spelling it out clearly, that if you steal it, if you help other people to steal it, if you receive those stolen articles from others, whether solicited or unsolicited, right, are acts that cause great displeasure to the Lord. Okay, so to continue on, in Sutra 305, we're also talking about Bhagavatapachara, which is against offenses to the Lord. Affront to the Lord's own is showing hostility to Sri Vaishnava's occasioned by egotism, selfish desires, and sensuality. Okay, so if we are hostile towards the Lord's devotees, his refugees, his slaves, his prapanas, right, or bhaktas, that means we're also hostile to the Lord, because they're the Lord's property, right? So there's a saying in English, love me, love my dog. So if you hate the person's dog, then the person will think you hate me too. If you hate my dog, right? Isn't it? When somebody shows you their baby and you comment, oh, what an ugly baby, then the parents become offended, right? So the idea is that we have to show respect, great respect to different other Vaishnavas, especially acharyas and acharyas, alwars, all these people. We have to show them respect, and we should not approach them in hostile ways, with ego, with selfish desires, or with sensuality, right? So, continuing on to section 306. The intolerable offense is unprovoked malice towards the Lord, the devotees, the acharya, and his disciples, right? So here, again, especially here, it's talking about the acharya. So unprovoked malice, meaning bad actions, bad thoughts, bad deeds, bad words, unprovoked, against the Lord, against the devotees, against the other disciples of an acharya, and specifically the acharya, because the acharya is the mediator between, he's the representative of Mahalakshmi, he's the mediator between us and God. So, you know, our first steps in property are to surrender to God through the agency of an acharya, do samashrayanam, and receiving from him the initial means of liberation, which is the Astakshara mantra, right? And being guided by him, by his words, by his teachings, and the teachings of the scripture that he gives us, to understand that the Lord is the primary means of salvation, the primary upaya or means. So continuing on, 307. And we see this similarly in other Vaishnava traditions also. That it's what's called by the Gaudiyas a mad elephant offense. Somebody is being so offensive to their own guru, to their own acharya, and then to other great Vaishnavas as well, like that. So the Lord doesn't take very kindly to that. That's not, even the Lord can suffer offenses against himself personally, but when his devotees are offended, then he'll be very upset. So in the last sutra in this particular section, 307, it says, these, in comparison, excel each other in reprehensibility and alienate one from both the means and the end. The means and the end is the Lord, right? So we don't want to be alienated from the means or the end, both of which are the Lord. Offense against those who have surrendered to the Lord is more serious than offending the Lord himself, which is what I just described. On the other hand, worshipping those things which are in relationship to the Lord is even greater than worship of the Lord himself. There's a statement like this in the scriptures, Aradhananam sarvesham vishnum aradhanam param. Right? Param means the greatest. Right? So Vishnu aradhanam means worship of Vishnu, Srimad Narayana. Param is the greatest. So Aradhananam sarvesham means of all types of worship, the worship of Lord Vishnu is the greatest. The second part of the verse, however, says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu aradhanam param tasmad paratanam devi, but Devi, Bado Devi, this is being spoken by Lord Shiva to his wife Parvati. Tasmad paratanam devi, tadiyanam saachanam, tadiya, that is that which is of Vishnu, that thing which is of Vishnu, which belongs to Vishnu, which is his, tadiya, tadiyanam saachanam. That is greater. That is even greater. That is that worship of that is even greater than the greatest worship, which is the worship of Lord Vishnu, or Srimad Narayana. So, what is related to Vishnu is the Bhagavatas, the devotees, the prapanas, the bhaktas, and the refugees, the devotees and refugees at his feet, the Vaishnavas. These are even, the worship of them is considered greater. So, offense against those who are surrendered to the Lord, the prapanas, is more serious than offending the Lord himself. Right? So remember, we got this gradation. Doing things against scriptural rules is bad. Worse than that is doing something directly offending the Lord. Worse than that is offending the Vaishnavas, the prapanas, the surrendered people. And then worse than that is the person who is most surrendered, the person who is most important in your surrender, that is your acharya, offending him. That's the worst. The acharya, his disciples, and the Lord's wards have dedicated their lives to the welfare of all sentient beings and are dedicated to selfless service. Therefore, any offense against them is pernicious beyond compare. The venerable teacher now embarks in the next section upon the discussion about the disciple-teacher relationship. Section 46, we're going to talk about the teacher and disciple relationship. So it's very step by step. What he's doing here is he's showing you the details of the prapana's life, right, and explaining to you step by step. So now that he's explained more about the importance of the teacher, he has to also now explain about the relationship between the teacher and the student, right? And like we said, all Vaishnavas are considered like acharyas. So we're not just talking about the person that somebody takes samashranam from, you get the mantra from, but that's of course a very important acharya. But Ramanuja himself had 6 acharyas. He had one acharya in Gurukula. He ended up leaving him because he was a teacher of Veda, which is a different form of Vedanta, which Ramanuja didn't agree with. That person was Yadava Prakash. That person later on became Ramanuja's disciple and surrendered to him. Then he had one teacher who was an untouchable, a Sudra, was a Sudra person who used to fan the deity in Kanchipuram, Varadaraj Perumal. His name was Kanchipurna. He had a Diksha guru called Mahapurna. He had a Shiksha guru called Goshtipurna, and he had some other gurus as well. So he had one Diksha guru, no doubt. Alavandar, even Yamunacharya is considered to be like a guru of Ramanuja, but he was not his Diksha guru. So there will be one person that is the guru for Samashrayanam, and other people will be also gurus, and they're all acharyas. So we should remember this, that there's not just one type of acharya. So even Bilvamangala mentions in that Krishna Karnamrita, we're talking about Bilvamangala, in the very beginning of Krishna Karnamrita, that first verse of that, he mentions Chintamani, the prostitute, was one of his gurus, right? He mentions his Diksha guru, Somagiri, and he also mentions the Lord within his heart is also a guru. That is called in Sanskrit Chaitya Guru. Chaitya Guru, the guru within. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, from me comes all knowledge, all remembrance, all forgetfulness. So whatever we've realized, whatever we've understood like that, we can only understand it by the mercy of the Lord. Why? Because Mama Maya Duratya, he says in Bhagavad Gita. He says, my Maya, Krishna says, or that my Maya is very difficult to overcome. So we could all be in Maya, and we can't know anything in this material world. Only by the mercy of Sriman Narayana can we know anything at all. So he is also the original guru. He's called Adi Guru. We say Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. Krishnam is the original guru. He spoke Bhagavad Gita. So he was a Jagat Guru. So when the Lord comes, every time he comes in the avatar forms, he comes and he gives teachings. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chidruskritam dharma samstapanataya. He comes to protect the devotees, to destroy the miscreants, right? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chidruskritam dharma, and establish religion. How does he establish religion? By teaching. By teaching. He says that in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Evam parampara praptam imam raja sayo vidu. I spoke this by parampara, means one after another. There's the succession of teachers coming from, and Krishna says, coming from, I taught it to the sun god taught it to Manu and Ikshvaku and these people, and they came down like that. The knowledge came down. So that's how the knowledge comes down, from teacher to student. And we know this when we go to school. You know, all of us have been to school, and we learn from our teachers. So it's understandable. So similarly in spiritual life, same thing. Learn from a teacher teaches you something. He's also a student. Every teacher is a student. And similarly, every student is supposed to also become a teacher and teach. The only way that you can repay, when we go to school, we pay fees to the school that we can go to the school. Our parents give money to the school, and they allow us to enter into the school. When we go to university, we have to pay more money to go and to take the course and everything like that. This is materialistic. But when you go to a spiritual teacher, you don't necessarily pay him money like that. But the only way that you can repay him for giving you this essential spiritual knowledge, right, is by, again, teaching it, right? And teaching, knowledge is a thing. Knowledge is a thing, is a treasure, which can never be stolen from you. Can never be stolen from you. In fact, the more you give it away, the more you have. The more realization, if you want to get more realization, teach what you know. Teach what you've understood. And as you teach it to others, they'll learn, and you will also appreciate more. But some people, they give class, even if nobody is around, they just speak. Read the Shastras and speak the Shastras. Think about the Shastras. Meditate on the Shastras. By doing so, they come to more realizations. Even if there's nobody listening, like that. So teaching, you will, if you want to know more, just teach. Okay. So here, anyway, let's get into this. Sutra 308 says, indeed, when imparting teaching, the acharya must at all costs avoid the reprehensible delusions regarding the position of a preceptor, the role of the disciple or student, and the results of the instruction, right? So hopefully he's going to explain this in more detail. So, but this sutra is talking to the acharya, to a person who wants to teach something. And like I said, every acharya is a student. Every teacher is a student, and every student is expected to repay the teacher by also teaching what this teacher gave him. Right. So if a person duly eligible to receive initiation and instruction seeks the good office of the acharya would be committing an offense more reprehensible than those listed above if he suffers from the distorted perceptions of himself, the role of the disciple, and the results of the teaching. Okay, so there is nothing worse. There's nothing worse than a teacher who teaches wrong teachings about himself, wrong teachings about the role of the student, and wrong teachings about the actual teachings of the actual siddhanta, the actual conclusion, the spiritual conclusion, right? This is a very bad thing. So we find that there are so many teachers, and they teach that, you know, it's very common in India that you have gurus and they teach that they are God. They say, I'm God. That's obviously not correct, right? And of course, in history, there have been some incarnations of God who taught. So when Krishna taught Arjuna, right? Arjuna said, no, I understand. Param Brahma, Param Dharma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. He said, look, you're God. I understand now that you're God. At a certain point, Arjuna understood that Krishna was God. He was an avatar. But normally, we won't say the acharyas, the different acharyas will never present themselves as being God. Neither will they present wrong doctrines. Neither will they tell the disciple that his role as a student should be different from what an actual student should be. Now he's going to explain probably more about what the actual truth is. So in the next sutra, having self-delusions about preceptorship means thinking of himself as being the acharya. So a teacher, a real teacher, he doesn't even think, not only doesn't think that he's God, he shouldn't even think that he's an acharya. He shouldn't even think that he's an acharya. As soon as he starts thinking that he's a acharya, what did I say? Every acharya, every teacher is a student. So he shouldn't change his mentality and think that he's not a student. He's a student. Everybody should be thinking, I'm a student. I'm a student. I'm a student of my teacher, of my teachers, right? So when you start thinking in delusion that you actually, you know, you're the acharya, that's not supposed to be good. Having delusions about the role of a disciple means thinking of a disciple as being his disciple. That's another thing, right? So the teacher, here's two. We're talking about three delusions here. First of all, there's a delusion if a teacher thinks that he's God. That's obvious. But even if he doesn't think that he's God, if he thinks that he's a Vaishnava, but he thinks that he is the acharya, that's an illusion. He is always a student. And secondly, if he thinks that his students, the ones that he's teaching, are actually his, they don't belong to him. They're not his students, right? They're people that have been sent by the Lord to help me to realize more as a student. I'm a student, and there are others who have been sent by the Lord to surround me, to help me to understand more as a student. I'm a student, and I'm learning by my associating with other people, with these others. They are not my students. They are not learning from me. I am not giving knowledge. Because why? Because Krishna says, from me only comes knowledge. That's very clear from the Gita. Okay, so the delusion about the results So not only he doesn't think that he's God, he doesn't think that he's the Acharya, he also doesn't think that that those students are his disciples or students. Having delusions about the results of initiating or instructing the proselyte, right? The student means being motivated by some kind of material benefit. Having delusions about the results, so that's another false ego, right? So there's a false ego of thinking that you know everything, that you are the teacher, you know everything, and that your teachings are going to save those people, and therefore those people are your students, and the result of your teachings are going to be that these students are going to make advancement, and they're going to therefore attain the result. And if the result is, if you teach that there's some other result too, what is the result that we should be teach? We should all teach that the result is the actual result. The actual result is nothing but understanding your true position in terms of being a slave or a servant of God and engaging in his service eternally. That's it. That's the result. There can be no material benefit. Even there should be no spiritual benefit. If we teach people, you should do this because if you do this, then you'll go to Vaikuntha and you'll enjoy forever, in Vaikuntha. No, that's not what we're talking to people about. No, you will understand that you are the eternal servant of God, and you will therefore serve him here and serve him in the hereafter also. The salvation of the disciple. If I think, I'm saving this disciple, I'm doing this, and therefore I'm saving this person, like that. No, that person is saving you. That person is saving you. God is sending people to somebody to help them have more realization, because they didn't really have any realization, right? They knew very little. And by sending people to a teacher, he thinks, these people are forcing me to go deeper into the scriptures, forcing me to understand more. So they're being sent by the Lord to do that. I'm not the means of their salvation. The Guru should never think like that. The Acharya should never think like that. Assisting the Lord or companionship with the disciple. That one of the results would be assisting the Lord. So the Guru should also never think, look at this. People are coming to me. I'm giving them knowledge. I'm giving them initiation and blah, blah, blah. Therefore, I'm assisting God. God needs me to assist him here on earth. He doesn't come himself all the time. So I'm here and I'm assisting him. This is also false ego. That's not what's going on here. That's not what's going on here. The knowledge is not being imparted by the Guru. The knowledge is coming, the realization is coming from your heart, from Krishna, from Sriman Narayana. And whatever the teacher says or does, that's also being done by Sriman Narayana. So where is the ego of the teacher to think that he is causing any of this to happen? He's not. So if you think that you're assisting the Lord by teaching others, that's just false ego. He's working through you, okay. Just like whatever we do, he's working through us. He's working through us, and he's working through. So God is working through the Guru, and God is working through the student to have the Guru and student relationship like that. He's working through both of them, and God is achieving his own ends. What is his own ends? To get his property back. What is his property? Both Guru and student, both teacher and student. They're both his property. It's all his property. It's all his Leela. It's him working through these individuals to achieve his goal. And what is his goal? His goal is to get his property back and have his property understand that it is his, and to engage us again in his eternal service in Sri Vaikuntha. That's his purpose, right? And he benefits from that purpose, right? More than us, right? We're not looking for their benefit, let's say. So we shouldn't also think that we're assisting the Lord, or that that the Lord is sending us this companion, disciple, some person like that. He's sending it to us to serve us, or to boost our ego, or for some reason like that. So the Acharya should never think of himself as being the teacher of sacred law, but rather as a conduit for his own Acharya's grace, which ultimately comes from Sriman Narayana. We should all think of ourselves like that. So as I said, all Vaishnavas are teachers, all Vaishnavas are students, all teachers are students, right? So we should all think like that. We should all think that we want to become a conduit for the grace of the Lord, for the mercy of the Lord through us. We want to let the Lord work through us. The disciple should not be regarded as one's personal disciple, but rather as a co-disciple of the same Acharya. When I was studying Pancharatra from Vaira Vasudeva Bhattacharya, he was the professor of Pancharatra at Maharaja Sanskrit College in Mysore. I was studying with him, and at a certain point he said, okay, now you understood how to do these ceremonies, installing the deity and this thing, so now you're ready, you should go and do that. You can go to different countries and do that. So I said, okay. So he said, there's one other thing we should do. We should do some, the Chakrabja Mandala Diksha. You need to take a particular Diksha. There's some mantras and some things that you need to be instructed in. And that's the final thing. So, okay, fine, we'll do that. So I said, but, I already have a guru. So he said, no. In all of this teaching, he told me from the very beginning, he said, don't think of me like a guru or a teacher. He said, if you have a teacher, okay, then just think of me as a co-student. We are also studying. I'm also studying along with you. Sometimes we see the example is when you go to school, sometimes the teacher has to leave the room. So sometimes the teacher, especially in higher schools like universities and colleges, there'll be what's called a teaching assistant, and the teaching assistant will probably be a postdoctorate person. Not postdoctorate, but anyway, he has a degree. He's doing his master's degree or something like that. He has his bachelor's degree, and so he's a little bit more advanced than the kids in the rest of the class, right? So he's brought on as a teaching assistant like that. Or sometimes in grade school or in primary school or high school, the teacher will say, okay, he'll pick one student out of the class and he'll say, just mind the class while I'm gone. I have to go for a few minutes and I'll be back, like that. We call this type of person either a teaching assistant or a school monitor, like a monitor in the classroom, like that. We're all students in the classroom, but one student sits up the front while the teacher's out of the room and just says, okay, let's all get on with our work. Let's all continue to study, like that. That's the position. So a co-disciple. The Acharya should think like that. He should think that he's like a co-disciple, that I'm also studying like that. And in fact, the students, a lot of times the students come to the Acharya. This is my experience also, that when I studied in Sri Rangam from one teacher called Ananta Narasimhachari, who's no longer with us, then I would ask so many questions, or my wife and I would ask these questions, and he would say, I'm very happy to teach you because you ask so many questions. These questions that you ask inspire me to learn more and go deeper into the scriptures. and I have to actually go and study more to answer those questions that you ask. So he thanked me very much. I thank you very much for coming and listening to me, because by your questions I'm learning more. I'm going and studying and learning more. So this is the point. There's this type of relationship between a Vaishnava student and teacher is like this, that the student's always asking questions and spurring the teacher on to learn more and more. But the teacher should also, like I said, every teacher is a student also. The Acharya should never think of himself as being a teacher of sacred law, but rather as being a conduit for the Acharya's grace. The disciple should not be regarded as one's personal disciple, but as a co-disciple or co-student of the same teacher. Then there are 4 self-delusions arising from the imparting of instruction. So when you impart instruction to anybody on anything, right, there are these 4 problems or 4 offenses or self-delusions that can come about in the teacher. One is monetary gain from the disciple's tuition fees. So if I say, okay, I'm going to teach this, and only those persons who pay me this much money can be the students, like that. That's delusion. Why? Because the knowledge is coming from the Lord. Why? How am I going to charge money to somebody or anything? Why should I expect anything from others for getting the knowledge which is coming from the Lord? Even if it's coming through me, right, and being realized by that person's super soul, and giving the realization to that person, how have I got anything to do with that? Why should I be rewarded for that? It's complete fallacy. And the problem is, of course, in materialistic sense, the teachers always get a salary and everything like that. But for spiritual knowledge, there shouldn't be any tuition fees at all. Now, that doesn't mean that the students don't appreciate teachings and don't appreciate in some way. We have teachings from Dr. Alwa. We have teachings from Dr. Tirunarayana. Dr. Tirunarayana he's retired. Happen to know that he's very well off. He's got everything set. He's not a poor Brahmin at all. He's got his whole thing together. He's told people that he doesn't require any dakshin or any sort of thing like that. Dr. Alwar is not retired. We should give him some bhavana, some dakshina. So we should definitely give some fees to him, offer him something, like that. We can't do other things for him, but whatever he needs, we should try to offer something to him. But the teacher doesn't demand it. It's not a prerequisite that the teacher demands that there's some tuition fee like that. Teacher doesn't demand that normally. The second delusion is that one is actually assisting in the salvation of the disciple. So first of all, don't charge for it, right? You're not going to, if you go to a Sri Vaishnava Acharya and he's charging for initiation or charging for teachings, there are some people who call themselves acharyas who do that, right? But here it's being decried. It's not good. And those people also, there are also teachers who think that they are the ones who are actually assisting the salvation of the disciple. No, it's false ego. We've discussed this. And the third delusion here, the delusion of actually assisting the Lord in his work of reclaiming the jiva, is very similar to number 2. But number 2 is worse in the sense, because if I think by my actions I'm helping somebody to liberation, that's the height of false ego. But even if you think you're just assisting, I think, no, I'm not the cause of liberation. Obviously, the Lord is the cause of liberation. But without me assisting the Lord, right, that wouldn't go on. That's also an illusion. That's also an illusion. A real acharya shouldn't have that illusion. the fourth one, the expectation of some social companionship from living with or socializing with a particular disciple who meets with one's personal approval. Okay, so not only teaching somebody, but maybe you have getting some rich disciple and he sets you up in a lifestyle, and has you as a fad, as a guru, and you enjoy the companionship of a particular disciple because he's so submissive to you. Whenever you say get a cup of milk, he goes and gets it, and you don't even have to say. He anticipates every desire that you have and fulfills that. So to have that expectation of, even though the scriptures say pariprashnena sevaya, that you should approach a teacher, you should serve him, and you should also, along with your questions, you should serve him. Even though the scripture says that, the person who's in the position of teaching shouldn't expect that. There shouldn't also be a prerequisite service of people like that. Even if somebody abuses me, they ask me a sincere question, and I give them a sincere answer that as far to the best of my knowledge, like that. Even if somebody's abusing me like that, I may think, wow, why should I impart some, I may think, right? Why should I teach such and such person? That person doesn't even appreciate the answer or even understand the answer. But he asked the question. So who am I not to answer? Who am I not to answer? The Lord is working through me, and somebody may come to me challenging, not even submissively. And they say, well, what about that? What about this? And I take my time and try to explain to the best of my ability, which is only working the Lord. The Lord is working through me. So I can't be attached to the consequences. I may preach to somebody. And they may not understand at all. I may preach to another person less, and that person understands. So it's not me, it's the Lord is acting. So the teacher should never think like that. Never think that or any of these delusions, these four delusions here. So shouldn't think to become a teacher for monetary gain or some material gain. Not think that you're the cause of the teacher is the cause of the salvation of the disciple. This is from the teacher's point of view. This is all from the teacher's point of view. The teacher has to not think like this, or have the delusion that he's assisting the Lord in reclaiming the jivas, or have any expectation that the disciples are going to serve him or say nice things to him or praise him or whatever it is. None of those things, right? Even if somebody approaches you and asks something challenging question or blasphemes you or argues with you or hates you like that, your response should be the truth. Just give them the truth or the answer to the question. That's all. So if the Acharya does not delude himself about being the prime cause of these four results of instruction, how are they accomplished? Right? How are the results accomplished? Okay, so here's the answer. 1, material benefits flow from the disciples' devoted and spontaneous care. Right? So it is seen that automatically disciples they will take care of the material needs of their teachers, right? Salvation is the result of the Lord's devoted care, right? So that we don't have to worry about that the guru is the cause of salvation, because the Lord is the cause of salvation. He's the upaya and he's the upaya. He's the means and the goal. 3, the service of the Lord comes from the Acharya's instruction. Companionship results from remembering the assistance of the Acharya, right? So when we remember what the Acharya taught us, naturally we are associating with the Acharya. The ultimate Acharya is the Lord, of course, like that. So whether we're directly, physically close to the teacher or not, doesn't matter. The service to the Lord is a consequence of the instruction that comes from the teacher. The teacher instructs us to worship the Lord, to serve the Lord. He instructs us. He doesn't even have to instruct us to the service of the Lord. He just has to tell us, this is your true nature. Your true nature is to be a servant of the Lord. And then obviously, if you're a servant, you got to do service. A servant has to do service. A slave has to do something. Otherwise, he's not a slave, right? If he's on strike, if he's not doing anything, then he's not a servant or a slave, right? So a servant has to serve. So the guru has to simply, the teacher has to simply explain to the disciple, has to simply explain to the disciple, you are a servant. After that, he understands. He understands what to do, to serve. And he serves the Lord, and he also serves the Vaishnavas, and he also serves the teacher. So, service to the Lord comes from the Acharya's instruction. Companionship results from remembering that assistance, that assistance of the Acharya, right? Pariprashnena sevaya. Pariprashna, by asking questions, he gets the instruction. And sevaya, by assisting by somehow assisting the teacher, right? In some way, right? That realization will come of the instruction. The disciple whose bounden duty is to serve the Acharya will automatically see the preceptor's needs, and therefore there is no particular necessity for him to expect it or to demand it. Right. So now we talked about what the Acharya is thinking and how the Acharya should think. Now we're talking also about how the student should think, how the Shishya should think. The student should think like that. He should automatically anticipate all these things. So he anticipates that the teacher needs this help or needs that help or can be served in a particular way. And this helps both of them, right? Therefore, there's no particular necessity for him to expect it or demand it. There is no particular necessity for the Acharya, the teacher, to expect or demand the assistance of the disciple or shishya or student. Personally, I prefer teacher and student to master and disciple, because the fact is every teacher is a student. Every student has to become a teacher. And basically, the emphasis should be more on learning than on serving, but service is there automatically, right? Even if you just learn the instructions of a teacher, that's a service. That's a type of service, right? So even if you don't give him money, or even if you don't help him in any way, or whatever, even just understanding his teachings is a service. Okay, so the disciple's salvation occurs through the Lord's grace and not through anything that the Acharya can or does do. The Hitopadesh, which is a book, Hita means friendly, Upadesha means instruction, so it means friendly instruction. Here he says sound instruction, okay? It means friendly instruction or sound instruction. It's a like Aesop's fables, it's a bunch of stories, particularly with people and animals, and there are moral stories. There are moral stories that impart good values to people, and different. Every story has has its own moral to it. Okay, so the Hitopadesh, sound instruction imparted to the disciple, will guide him in the service of the Lord. Companionship will naturally result in the relationship if the relationship is a mutually beneficial one, right? And the Acharya has fulfilled his duty of being a competent and good teacher, right? But neither should he expect companionship, nor he should try to manipulate things. Okay, so it's a natural thing. It comes about naturally. If the teacher has a certain mental attitude and the student also has a certain mental attitude according to these verses and thinks in that way, and doesn't think in these other wrong ways, right, then there'll be a good relationship and which will be mutually beneficial. And that's what I was saying before. So continuing on with Sutra 311, it may be asked, how are the direct results obtained and what is the accomplishment of preceptorship, teachership? These results are accomplished due to the acharyas and the Lord's good intention. So the Lord has the intention, the Lord is looking for an excuse to save the souls. It may be asked that how are the direct results obtained and what is the accomplishment of preceptorship? These results are accomplished due to the acharya and the Lord's good intention. So the teacher has to have good intention. The Lord has to have good intention. The students also have to have good intention. Hopefully the students also have good intention. Usually the students have pretty good intention. They don't go to a guru to a teacher for no purpose. But there are occasions when we have people who don't have good intentions also, who approach teachers. Okay, so the Lord's good intention is the most important, of course, because the Lord is the means, is the real means, the primal means, and the primary means, and the goal. The acharya also has to have a good, he has to have a good intention, and so does also the student. So if the acharya, in Sutra 312, if the acharya does not follow these precepts, then he confounds the very principle of their relationship. The function of the preceptor is to impart instruction, to educate the disciple, to become a selfless and devoted person. If this process is successful, then the devotee will bloom as such. In turn, the preceptor, who has the good intention to deploy this course of action, is blessed with the preceptor by the Lord. The student should be. In turn, the student, who has the good intention to deploy this course of the preceptor. In turn, the preceptor, who has a good intention to deploy this course of action, is blessed with preceptorship by the Lord. Okay, so somebody is a student, and they also teach what they've learned. So ultimately, if that person teaches what he's learned, then the Lord helps him to also teach. If, on the other hand, he does not follow the precepts and becomes deluded, these things that were just mentioned before, then he is unworthy of the preceptorship and loses the ability to impart instruction effectively. His instruction then will be of no avail, and the disciples will not respond to the teachings. It goes without saying. In the next sutra, the acharya should show compassion to the disciple and dependence upon his own teacher. Right. So we have, if we're a teacher, then our teacher, we are a student of our teacher. And if we have students, right, we should think compassionately upon them, and we should also have dependence upon our own teacher. Reverence and dependence on our own teacher. The acharya should extend full compassion and skillful means in caring for the disciple's spiritual instruction, being constantly mindful that he is but a conduit for his own acharya's grace and nothing more. Yeah, so the teacher thinks like that. The teacher thinks that I want to bestow something upon my students, but actually what I'm bestowing upon my students is only coming from my teacher. My teacher through me, and ultimately the Lord through me, their grace, the Lord and my teacher, their grace is being bestowed upon these co-disciples, these co-students of mine. These people who have come up around me and who are asking me questions. That's how the acharya should think. the teacher. So in 3:14, he says, through compassion, the quintessence or the essence of the disciple is reinforced, and by dependence upon his own teacher, his own quintessence or essence is reinforced. Okay, so the essence of the compassion that the teacher has for the student, right, reinforces the essence of the disciple. The compassion that the teacher's teacher has, right, and the dependence that teacher has on his own teacher is reinforcing his essence, right? So it's the reinforcing the relationship from two sides. So there are two things: there's the teacher and the student. By the teacher being compassionate to the student and the student being dependent on the teacher, a strong bond is made. And it's a chain, because that teacher is also a student who has dependence on his teacher, and his teacher has compassion on him. So in the Guru Parampara, in the chain of teachers and students, one after another, coming down from the Lord, the first person has compassion on the second person who is dependent upon him. And so the dependence and compassion is what binds them together. And then similarly, that person also has compassion on the next person who also has dependence upon him. So every person has dependence and compassion. They have dependence on their teacher and compassion on anyone else, on somebody else who is their student or co-student. So through compassion, the essence of the disciple is reinforced, and by dependence upon his own teacher, the teacher's own essence is reinforced. The quintessence of the disciple is one with that of the acharya, both being related to each other as jivas and to the Lord in an eternal and indissoluble bond. Therefore, compassion, which is a limitless oneness and a complete and total acceptance of the other, is the only emotion to have. The disciple regards his teacher with the same dependence and veneration that one would have to Sriman Narayana, and thus reinforces the natural Shesha-Sheshi relationship of the enlightened jiva. The Shesha-Sheshi is one of the 9 relationships, right? Shesha means servant, and Sheshi means master. So, in Sutra 3:15, the direct meaning of the term acharya, right, is one who teaches the sacred Mahamantra, the Astakshari, which liberates one from samsara. That is the Om Namo Narayanaya mantra. Right? So normally, when we say the word acharya or teacher or guru or whatever it is, it means, the normal meaning of this word is the person, the Diksha Guru, the person who gives the Astakshara mantra to the other person. Right? But of course, we know it can be used for Shiksha Guru, Chaitya Guru, Pata Pradarshika Guru. We described all these other forms of gurus too. But when we normally use the word guru or acharya or teacher, we're talking about this person who teaches the Astakshara. Why? Because we already discussed that the primary or the preliminary, let's say, the preliminary means of liberation is through surrendering to an acharya and through the means of the Astakshara. We're using the Astakshara. What does the Astakshara say? In the Vedas, in the Narayana Upanishad, it says, Om Namo Narayana iti mantropasakaha vaikunta bhuvana lokam gamisyati. That a person who worships this Om Namo Narayana mantra, thinks about it and uses it and understands it, right? That person will go to Sri Vaikunta. Right? Om Namo Narayana iti mantropasakaha vaikunta bhuvana lokam gamisyati. So that's the preliminary step towards moksha. 316. Preceptorship is not consummated by one who teaches lesser, petty mantras, even though they are in propitiation of the Lord, even other mantras to Sriman Narayana, fostering continued existence in samsara. So here he's being very direct about it, and he's saying that we should consider the person who teaches Astakshara as the most important guru, as the most important acharya, most important teacher, right? And there are other people who teach other mantras. The Lord's mantras are referred to as being petty in respect to the results obtained from their recitation. Okay, so there might be some other mantras which give some other fruits, but they're not as potent as this Om Namo Narayana mantra. And we've understood this by studying the Mumukshapadi, which describes about the different mantras, the Astakshara, Dvaya mantras, and Charma slokas. So, for the same reason, they're said to foster continued existence in samsara. So because some other mantras may give some other fruits, right, which are not necessarily the same as Om Namo Narayanaya, therefore, we should not think of the person who's given us those as the main acharya when we normally say the word acharya or teacher. This fruit indeed is limited in certain conditions. They arise from one's personal desires. So sometimes people have desires and they receive some mantras, even the mantras, some mantras in regard to the Lord, but because they have some different desires, these are not to be considered the same as the Astakshara mantra. So just as the Astakshara mantra is considered the greatest mantra, therefore, because it's the greatest of the Vyapaka mantras, and the Vyapaka mantras are the greatest of the three Vyapaka mantras, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Vishnave, and Om Namo Narayanaya. These are the Vyapaka mantras. And the last one, Astakshara mantra, is the most important of them of all. So, here we go. Okay, so we're going to explain about this a little bit more. The recitation of the Sanatan Gopal mantra. So for instance, there's a mantra called Sanatan Gopal mantra where people chant it when they want to have children. The childless couple, they can chant this mantra and they can achieve progeny. So the recitation of Sanatan Gopal mantra, for example, results in the attainment of progeny. Lakshmi mantras may produce wealth, and Hayagriva mantras may produce learning. Sudarshana mantras or even Narasimha mantras may be used to ensure protection from competitors or enemies, or ensure success in undertakings. But all these results are worldly and limited, and they only serve to perpetuate one's sojourn in samsara. So, those are the examples being given. Sutra number 321, the worthy disciple is one who rejects anything other than the goal. Well, what's the goal? The goal is Sriman Narayana, the service of Sriman Narayana. Desires only to hear teachings about the means to the goal, is restive in samsara, affectionate to the preceptor, and unenvious. So this is a description of the proper student. The perfect student or disciple is one who is only concerned with pursuing the goal to unification with God, meaning re-establishing our eternal service to Sriman Narayana in Vaikuntha. Craves only to listen to teachings on the subject and is eager to be liberated from samsara. He bears inordinate affection for the preceptor and is unenvious of the prosperity and happiness of others. I think that's pretty straightforward. Sutra 322. The disciple should consider his preceptor as the mantra, deity, the result, and all those things connected with the result, the means to attain the result, and the source of joy in samsara. So this is first of all, he explains who is the acharya. Then he explains what the perfect disciple is, and then he says how the perfect disciple should think. He should consider his preceptor as the mantra, the deity, the result, and all those things connected with the result, the means to attain the result, and the source of joy in samsara. Now, this is this is going to lead to a doctrine called acharya prapatti or acharya abhimana. Acharya abhimana or acharya prapatti is actually a fifth, one of the 5 ways in Artha Panchagam. Acharya, in another book called Artha Panchagam, he talks about five ways to approach God, 5 paths to God: karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, prapatti to God, surrender to God, and acharya abhimana or acharya prapatti, surrender to the acharya. So simply, if somebody surrenders to the acharya, to the teacher, and he has great faith in the teacher, and he sees the teacher as his deity, the teacher as his mantra, the teacher as the result, the service to the teacher as basically his what he needs to do, and his only joy, that is okay. That's also okay. That's also a method. And normally this acharya abhimana is done at the same time as prapatti to the Lord. So although previously we talked about only serving the Lord and only surrendering unto the Lord, we're actually surrendering to the Lord through the mediation of Mahalakshmi, whose representative is the acharya, who gives us the Astakshara mantra, and therefore the surrender to the Lord through the acharya is non-different from surrendering to the Lord as well. But in some cases we have split them apart, the surrender to the Lord and surrender to the acharya. And there are some examples. There are 2 examples that come to mind of a person who only really followed this surrendering to the acharya and didn't actually surrender to God. So the first example is Madhurakavi Alwar. Madhurakavi Alwar was one Alwar who met Nam Alwar, was his preceptor, was his teacher, and he wrote a prabandha called Kaninun Siratamba. And Kaninun Siratamba is his prayers to Nam Alwar as his guru, as his preceptor. He didn't write any prayers directly to the Supreme Srimad Narayana. Madhurakavi Alwar only prayed to his guru and didn't pray to God. So why is he called? Sometimes people say he's not an Alwar then because he didn't pray to God. So, but he is an example of acharya abhimana. He's an example of acharya prapatti, so complete surrender and subservience and dependence. We just talked about dependence and compassion, right? You have dependence on your teacher and you have compassion on those who are learning from you. And he is an example. He's an example of complete dependence upon Nam Alwar, like that. So that is acharya abhimana or acharya prapatti, right? Also during the time of Ramanuja, when Ramanuja was unable to beg for food because some envious people tried to poison him at one time, they arranged for somebody to cook for him because, of course, a sannyasi cannot cook for himself. The sannyasi to yogi chana niragni and chakriya, it says in Bhagavad Gita. So sannyasi is one who lights no fire and performs no work. Lights no fire means he can't cook for himself. Performs no work means he doesn't have any occupation. He's looking only to serve the Supreme Lord and to leave this material world. So that sannyasi is supposed to beg for his foodstuffs. But if people are giving him poison, then how can he live? So that's why the disciples of Ramanuja got one disciple and said, you are going to now be the cook who cooks for Ramanuja. So that one time the deity of Nam Perumal, the Utsava festival deity of Ranganatha, was going in the streets of Sri Rangam around the temple in procession. And it is the duty of all Vaishnavas to, when they hear that procession coming, you run out into the street, pay your obeisance when the deity comes by and follow along the Lord's procession. That's the respectful thing to do. and it's a service to the Lord to be part of his procession. So when Ramanuja heard this, he called all his disciples and said, let's go. We all have to go out into the street, offer our respects to the Lord and worship the Lord and follow along in the procession. So he said this, but there was one disciple who was his cook who was heating milk on the stove. And if you don't watch milk when you heat it on the stove, it boils over and it's spoiled. It gets burned up and everything. So he was boiling the milk, and he said to Ramanuja, he actually disregarded Ramanuja's instruction to go and worship the Lord and follow along in the procession. And he said, you worship your Lord and I'll worship my Lord. So he meant, Ramanuja, you go and worship the Lord. You have a relationship with the Lord, go worship. The only Lord that I know is you as my guru. So I'm going to worship my Lord by staying here and doing the service that I have for you of boiling the milk. So this is another example of Acharya Abhimanam or Acharya property, where somebody is so much devoted to the Acharya or the teacher, even he forgets to worship God, like that. So that is also a system, but it's sort of rare to see it completely divorced from the service of God. So normally these two things are combined together. Service to God and service to the Acharya are normally combined, but they can be also practiced separately. It's possible. All right. So continuing on, right? Our great teacher Yamunacharya in Sutra 323, our great teacher Yamunacharya revealed this teacher, mother, father, woman. And this is from Stotra Ratna, which is a prayer by Yamunacharya, which we're now studying with Dr. Tirunarayana, with a commentary by Pillai, Perivachan Pillai. And it's available on the YouTube channel. You can check it out. And so Stotra Ratna number 5, verse 5, it says, I reverentially bow my head to the blessed feet of the first master of our lineage, Namalwar. So whose feet are decorated with bakula flowers and which are alone the father, mother, women, children, wealth, and to everyone of our lineage. Okay, so this is a Taniyan, or it's a prayer to in praise of Namalwar, like a pranam mantra to Namalwar by Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya, of course, his grandfather was Natha Muni, who was the disciple of Namalwar in a dream, in yogic mystic trance. Natha Muni, after praying by chanting those verses that I told you about just now, we were talking about Madhurakavi Alwar was the disciple of Namalwar. And Madhurakavi Alwar made this prayer to his guru Namalwar called Kaninun Siratamba in praise of Namalwar. Many years later, in order to get back the lost 4,000 Nalaya Divya Prabandham, Natha Muni was in Tirunelveli, in very southern tip of India. He was trying to find the rest of these 4,000 verses. He knew only 11 verses. And he came to a person who was a descendant of Madhurakavi Alwar, who knew this prayer of Madhurakavi Alwar to Namalwar. And he said, if you just repeat this many, many times, thousands and thousands of times, surely Namalwar will appear to you and he will bless you with all the divine Tamil verses of the 4,000 Tamil verses of the Nalaya Divya Prabandham of the Alwars. So he did that, and Namalwar appeared to him, and he gave him that. So this is the prayer that Yamunacharya, the grandson of Natha Muni, is praying to his great grand guru Namalwar, the guru of his grandfather, who is Namalwar. And Namalwar comes as fourth in the Guru Parampara. After the Lord, who is the first guru, Mahalakshmi, and Vishwaksena, then comes Namalwar, who is also called Sadakopan. Right? Okay, so this is from Stotra Ratna. So continuing on, Sutra 324, it says the basis of this attitude is mindfulness of a sense of gratitude. This sense of gratitude that the student has for the teacher, the sense of gratitude is a quality which characterizes genuine spirituality. Genuine spirituality is the quality that we see from genuine spirituality is there's gratitude, right? The teacher has gratitude to his teacher. The student has gratitude to the teacher. So everyone has this attitude of gratitude. And also even the teachers will have an attitude of gratitude towards the students, even that they're coming and they're like co-students and they're helping me also to understand. So it is a deep and sincere sense of gratitude for everyone and everything in our lives, because everything and everyone in our lives is working according to the Lord's plan and is being sent by the Lord to help us. Nothing should ever be taken for granted, and whenever possible, this gratitude should be shown and expressed. So it's one thing, it's to feel gratitude. It's another thing to express gratitude openly. So we should take time to express open gratitude. We have this coming up this week. We have a festival in America called Thanksgiving. So the tradition is that people say, I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for that. Everybody has a common meal and they all sit around the table, and before they eat, they say, what are you thankful for this year? I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for that. So here he's saying the student is thankful for everyone around him, because everyone around him is being sent by the Lord to save him, to help him be saved. Because that's the Lord's plan, to save him. But especially the Acharya. Especially the Acharya who gives him the Astakshara. Sense of gratitude in Sutra 325. The sense of gratitude is firstly directed towards the Acharya. That's what I said, most specifically the Acharya. And secondly, towards the Lord. And that's interesting, right? We would think that the Prapana would think first, I'm so grateful to the Lord because the Lord's the actual one who's going to save me. But here, the Lord, this is coming back to that point that we made, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnum Aradhanam Param Tasmat. The Lord is more pleased if you show gratitude to the Acharya, to the teacher, than if you show gratitude to himself. So first offer gratitude to the Acharya, and secondly to the Lord. And this is the way that we offer our Guru Parampara Anusandanam. When we're every day, when we think about the Guru Parampara, we think about it in an ascending order. Asmat Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Guru Bhyo Namaha, Srimati Ramanujaya Namaha, Srimati Parankushidasaya Namaha, Srimati Munamaya Namaha, Srimati Ram Mishra Namaha, Srimati Shadakopaya Namaha, Srimati Vishwaksena Namaha, Shriya Namaha, Sridharaya Namaha. Sridharaya Namaha is the Supreme Lord, but we start with our Guru. We start with our Guru, and then we go up, ascending, in ascending gratitude, and finally to the Supreme Lord. So there are some instances where we will say prayers, or we will do things, or we will make offerings, and those offerings will be offered first to the Lord. And there are other situations where we will do this ascending process, where we go through the Guru and the Param Guru and the Parameshti Guru and the Param Guru, and all the way back through the Parampara, all the way back to Sriman Narayana, through Vishwaksena, Namawa Vishwaksena Mahalakshmi, and to Sriman Narayana, like that. So that's one thing, especially the group. When we do Anusandanam, when we meditate every day on the mercy of the Guru Parampara coming down to us, we have to meditate in an upward way, in a junior to senior list order. The sense of gratitude is firstly directed towards the Acharya, and secondly towards the Lord. The disciple at first feels immensely grateful to the Acharya for linking him up with the Lord and for revealing the true nature as Jiva. He then feels inordinately grateful to the Lord for having bestowed upon him sufficient grace to have established contact with the Acharya in the first place. So it's all about gratitude to the Acharya. First of all, the student is grateful to the teacher. And then he's grateful to the Lord. Why is he grateful to the Lord? Because the Lord has sent him the teacher. So, Sutra 326, the disciple and the Acharya should demonstrate a mutual beneficial and affectionate relationship. And we already discussed this, that through compassion and through grace, so dependence and compassion, they establish this relationship. Sutra 327, the disciple should always attend to the Acharya's welfare and pray to the Lord to ensure the preceptor's well-being. Sutra 328, the disciple becomes committed to satisfying the Acharya becomes committed to uplifting the disciple. Sutra 329, because it follows that the disciple is the recipient of the Acharya's love, there is no place for the Acharya's anger towards the disciple. This is very interesting because many times sometimes Acharyas will become, or teachers will become angry with the students. In a genuine and open, sincere spiritual relationship, the Acharya and the disciple, the teacher and the student, are like lovers. Mutual love, friendship, and affection should override any feelings of frustration that may arise between them in terms of the teaching and the learning dynamic. Anger, which is a result of a frustrated personal desire, has no place here. Now, there may be, having said that, there may be some time when a teacher shows some sort of anger towards a student like that, but it will be for his own good. It will not be out of some frustrated personal desire of either the student or the teacher. Neither of them should have such personal desires. Neither of them should avoid reprimanding at any time, Neither of them should avoid reprimanding at any time, as it is beneficial for both. Okay, the Dharma Shastras enjoin that the disciple has to test the guru prior to accepting him and to constantly observe the guru's behavior. If the guru strays from the path, as is indeed human, then the disciple has a right to remind him of his duty without criticizing him to others or revealing the errant behavior to anyone else. The teacher, wishing only the welfare of the disciple, should always be ready to constructively reprimand an errant disciple. Neither reprimanding nor being reprimanded in a constructive manner should be the cause of disquietude, right, or problems for either, as theirs is a mutually beneficial relationship, and in order for this to be so, there must be an essential element of candid, sincere, and mutually beneficial criticism. Okay, that's very interesting. So it's not that either the disciple either the student or the teacher have to give up observing each other and pointing out things to each other to help each other. But it should be constructive, right? It should not be destructive of the relationship, right? Because we're all human, right? In this material world, we're all imperfect. So, 331, the disciple should avoid any cause for being reprimanded. So, the disciple who is dedicated to his or her spiritual practice should always act to please the Acharya and thus avoid any cause for being reprimanded. 332. Reprimand by the preceptor, like the reprimand of the Lord, is part of the results of the Lord's active grace. So we should see any reprimand coming from the teacher as being the grace of the teacher and also the grace of the Lord on us to correct us. But when the disciple does err or make a mistake, then the Acharya's reprimand should be graciously accepted, just as if it was Lord Krishna himself scolding him or her. 333. The Acharya should foster the realization of the essential nature of the disciple or student. This disciple or student should attend to the Acharya's physical needs. 334. Both of these goals are the proper attitudes of the two and a service to the Lord. 335. For the Acharya, protecting his own body obscures his essential character as Acharya. For the disciple, protecting his own self obscures the self-nature of being dependent. Right. So neither, that's why the same thing. All teachers are students, all students are teachers, like that. So it's the same for the Acharya and same for the disciple. Neither one of them should try to maintain their own material facility or whatever it is. They should leave it up to the other person. So for the Acharya, protecting his own body, right, obscures his essential nature as teacher, and for the disciple, protecting his own body, his own self, obscures his self nature as being dependent. So because the Acharya is supposed to look out for him, and they're supposed to look out for each other, basically. Okay, so an Acharya should not be required to go out and earn a living for himself and his family in order to maintain house and hearth. The Acharya's duty is to teach and to guide the community, and they should therefore ensure that all his material needs are taken care of. The Acharya working for a living therefore negates his essential character as a preceptor. The disciple who strives to liberate himself or herself from samsara negates, right, the essential characteristic of being dependent upon the Acharya. Right, okay, so we're talking about a perfect situation here. In a perfect situation, the teacher just teaches, right, and looks out for the students. And in a perfect situation, the student doesn't do other things, but be dependent upon the Acharya in his quest for spiritual perfection or liberation. So he's just dependent upon the Acharya, the words of the Acharya, the orders of the Acharya. That's all. This is perfectional sort of a relationship is being explained here. In 336, the Acharya who thinks he's personally responsible for the disciple's salvation, which was spoken about before, is destroyed by pride. The disciple who thinks that he or she is personally responsible for the Acharya's livelihood is destroyed by self-interest. The preceptor should be free of any egotistical idea that somehow his activities are contributing to the salvation of the disciple, and the disciple should avoid any possessive consideration that the Acharya's livelihood is somehow dependent upon his material contribution, and that without his charity, the preceptor would be at a loss. All material support that's given to an Acharya should be given out of a sense of duty and obligation, not out of self-interest or self-promotion. It's best that all support should be given anonymously. Right? That's nice. Then there's no ego involved. So, 337. The Acharya should regard the contribution given for his livelihood as his own property. The disciple should regard the means for his own livelihood as the Acharya's property. Upon taking initiation, the disciple should figuratively surrender everything he has to the Guru. The Guru then loans it all back to him. Therefore, whatever the disciple subsequently gives to the Acharya for his personal maintenance is nothing but an installment upon a loan and should be regarded as such by both parties. The Acharya shall become primarily responsible for the livelihood of both of them. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. This should be the attitude of the student is that everything that I have, all that I have, and all that I am, it belongs to the Acharya. But the Acharya, of course, doesn't think like that. He thinks, no, these people are my co-disciples. So the Acharya doesn't actually think. So here, although it says that the Acharya should regard the contribution given for his livelihood as his own property, still he should be careful to think that he is the Acharya and he is the owner of the disciple's properties. He shouldn't think like that. So, Sutra 338, the Acharya should not take the personal property of the disciple, and the disciple should not give such property to him. Okay? The Acharya should never accept or request anything from the disciple which the latter considers as his own personal property, or which is intended for personal and exclusive use. For example, if the disciple appears before the Acharya with a Rolex watch, this is an interesting example given by Ramananda Acharya, the Acharya should not hint that it should be given to him, nor should the disciple offer it. I had this exact, almost exactly happen to me one time. I was studying something with somebody, and that person, it wasn't a Rolex, but that person did ask me for my watch. And I told them that I actually need the watch in order to do my service to the Lord, because at the time I was a pujari in a temple, and I need to know what time it was in order to do different offerings and things like that. So, anyway, it's an interesting example that's given here. It reminded me of that story. I'm not going to say who that person was that asked me for the watch. But anyway, the point is that the Acharya should not take the personal property of the disciple that he knows the disciple is using from in his own life, and it's just a give and take between the guru and the disciples on this matter, you know. So if both of them are sincere, then they'll have a very nice relationship, and these things won't even come up. So 339, receiving such property makes the Acharya appear destitute. Giving makes the disciple appear like a thief. The Acharya should not actually need anything, as he is already complete and self-satisfied. Relying completely upon the grace of the Lord is everything. The disciple does not own anything to give, right? If he really understands his true nature, right? Since everything already belongs to the Acharya. 340. When taking and giving arise, the spiritual relationship ceases. The moment the Acharya deludes himself that he is taking from the disciple, and the disciple considers that he is a donor to the Acharya, their spontaneous and natural spiritual relationship dissolves into a mundane business transaction. That is very poignant point here. The disciple cannot give since he is destitute. The Acharya cannot receive since he is replete. He's complete, right? Yeah. If you think that the real point is to guard against the mentality, right? The disciple cannot think, I'm a big donor, I'm giving so much to the guru, because he should be thinking that he doesn't own anything and the guru owns everything. The Acharya can't actually receive anything because he has to believe that he's already self-satisfied. He's already full. It's enough. The Acharya's position, Sutra 342, the Acharya's position is justified by repletion, and the disciple's position is justified by emptiness. So each student thinks that he's empty, right? He has nothing. I have nothing to offer. You know, it's all the property of my Acharya. And each Acharya or each teacher, he thinks that he doesn't need anything. He's already got everything. The disciple has theoretically surrendered everything she or he owns to the Acharya and is therefore totally destitute and is not in a position to give anything. The Acharya does not need anything since he has putatively overcome all his selfish desires and needs nothing, being completely and totally dependent on the Lord. Sutra 343. I'm just going to see if we're getting to any ending here. Yeah, we are. Okay, good. 343. 343. Then it may be asked, can the disciple therefore do no favor to the Acharya? And the answer is, the Acharya considers only the progress of the disciple. Seeing the intellectual progress and spiritual unfoldment of the disciple is the only thing that can gratify the preceptor, and there is nothing else but sincere work at personal development which will be a favor to the Acharya. I would say the Acharya is also happy when he sees the student teaching what he's learned. In fact, well, if he's practicing what he learned, that's nice. If he's teaching what he's learned, even better. In fact, the greatest joy of the Acharya would be to see the disciple excel even him in spiritual advancement. The results are, namely, knowledge, firm resolve, universal love, and good conduct. So these are the results. The only gratification that the Acharya derives from their relationship is the development of qualities of increased knowledge and wisdom, conviction and resolute pursuance of the ultimate goal, the development of universal loving kindness and compassion to all beings, and good conduct, which means doing the appropriate act at the appropriate time with the benefit of all beings in mind, loka sangraha. See Bhagavad Gita chapter 12. So they're the results. So the results again: knowledge, firm resolve, universal love, and good conduct. Sutra 346. For the purpose of pleasing the Acharya, the disciple should abstain from appropriating anything belonging to the Lord, obstructing the enjoyment of the Lord, and any display of contumely for the teacher, the mantra, or God. Contumely means insolent or insulting language or treatment. So, any insolent or insulting language or treatment of the teacher, the mantra, or the Lord. Right? So, for the purpose of pleasing the Acharya, the disciple should abstain from these things. Appropriating anything belonging to the Lord, obstructing the enjoyment of the Lord, and any display of disrespect or malice or for the teaching, or insulting language or insolence regarding the teacher, the mantra, or the Lord. Sutra 347, the appropriation of the Lord's property is the disciple's sense of independence. When you feel independent, even if we think that we are our own master, that is independence from the Lord. We are totally dependent on the Lord, and therefore we can't own anything. Even ourselves we don't own. We are his property. And his dependence on another other than the Lord, right? And not only that, we are not the slaves of anyone else. We're not the followers of anyone else. We're not sycophants to anybody else. Obstructing he is the only one who is our shelter. Obstructing the enjoyment of the Lord is consciously obstructing his salvific act. Salvific act means when he is saving us or taking us to moksha. So his enjoyment is to save the wrong souls, the souls that are in Maya. That's the enjoyment of the Lord. He enjoys that leela of doing that, of saving the souls. So instructing his saving the souls is instructing his enjoyment. The jiva belongs to Paramal, Sriman Narayana. To think that one is an independent or free individual, or on the other hand, developing a dependent relationship with another being, right, being the servant or slave of some other being, is tantamount, like a devata or even an important person in this world, is tantamount to appropriating the Lord's property. To attempt to protect and liberate oneself from samsara through the practice of various sadhanas. Remember this? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, different sadhanas of self-effort, is tantamount to obstructing the pleasure of the Lord, which is to bring about the reunion of all jivas entrapped in samsara with the Lord. Right? So, to attempt to protect or liberate oneself is wrong. According to the Tenacharya Sampradaya, according to Tengalais, according to Pilalokacharya, and all the Tengalaya-charyas, right, we should not attempt to protect or liberate ourselves from samsara by doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. That is wrong. Because, why? Because the Lord himself will save us. He wants to save us. And us trying to save ourselves is interfering with that saving of us by the Lord. Just like the drowning man who is flailing around in the water, can't save himself, and neither can the person who is trying to save him. The lifeguard cannot save him because he is fighting. So the efforts that we put into karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga as a sadhana or practice to try to get liberation are not pleasing to the Lord ultimately, because they belie our underlying misunderstanding that we are not completely and absolutely subservient and dependent on the Lord. So here he says that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. So, Sutra 348, his salvific or his liberative methods are set forth in the Prapana Paritranam, which is another book, which we can look at sometime, Prapana Paritranam. An affront to, so the different methods the Lord takes to try to save the souls is in this other book, Prapana Paritranam. An affront to the teacher consists of not practicing what is prescribed by him and passing on those teachings to others who are not qualified. So two things, right? The student is blaspheming his teacher, or he's going against his teacher by not practicing what the teacher has taught him, and also by teaching the teachings to other people who are not qualified. Of course, it's very difficult to say who's not qualified, right, when there's no qualifications for property. But in fact, the only qualification is that one has to come to the realization that there are no qualifications and that one is completely dependent upon the Lord. That's the true nature of the soul. And if you come to that realization, if you say that that's a pre-qualification, okay. But actually what it is, it's an understanding that there are no pre-qualifications. So it's sort of a bit of a word juggery there, but it's like a catch-22. We say there's no pre-qualifications, but in fact, one has to come to the conclusion that there are no pre-qualifications, and that is a qualification to come to that conclusion. Does that make any sense? We have to come to the conclusion that there are no pre-qualifications. So that conclusion is somewhat of a qualification. That it's the only qualification, really, that we have to realize the self, the real true nature of the self. So, an affront to the teacher consists of not practicing what is prescribed by him and passing those teachings on to those who are not qualified. An affront to the mantra that the teacher gives you, Om Namo Narayanaaya, the Astakshara mantra, consists of forgetting its correct meaning. So not only do we use the Astakshara mantra, Om Namo Narayanaaya, in our practice, in our puja, in our service to the Lord, in our kainkariya, but we also must know the correct meaning of the mantra, which we should have understood from Mumukshapati, studying Mumukshapati, and other Rahasya Granthas, other secret doctrines, esoteric doctrines, or knowingly distorting its meaning. So we have to know the correct meaning, and we also have to know what are the incorrect meanings. And we have to use it in the proper way, with respect. Affront to God consists of devoting the three causative instruments, mind, speech, and action, to unworthy objects. In other words, serving other masters by our potencies. We have the possibility of using our mind, speech, and action for different things. If we use them in unworthy ways to try to get unworthy objects, or attain other things, unworthy goals, and failing to devote these to the Lord is thievery. We're stealing the resources that the Lord has given us, our very existence as His servant, and we're serving some other objects or some other goals with those things. That is an affront to God. So these are the three affronts, the three things: to the teacher, to the mantra, and to the Lord. And all three are considered the same thing. Remember, that sutra above says, so we should be the student should be thinking that all three are the same. So, Sutra 349, with regard to the Acharya, the disciple should, until departing from this body, always behave in such a way as to continually be mindful of the Acharya's favor. You restored my errant mind, and you conferred upon me a mind that will always serve. And these are references to Tiruvai 278 and Tiruvai 277. So 278 says, O Sridhara, O my Lord, you restored my errant mind and rid me of life's sorrows. And now with a pure mind, I worship your feet, sing and adore you as the sire of Cupid. Your complexion is that of an emerald, O Vamana, my lotus-eyed Lord. For this favor so great, what can I do to you in return? And Tiruvai 277. Oh my Lord, how clever you are, my lotus-eyed master with sparkling teeth. You conferred on me a mind that will always be riveted to your lotus feet. Days pass meditating upon you. O my Lord Vamana, you become Trivikrama and measured the universe with 3 strides. So that's the end of that section. The next section we come up to is section 47 about mental turpitude.